Hello, everyone. I'm Frank Coletta, and welcome to our annual symposium. This, of course, is the 2025 ATN National Symposium on GenAI, Graduate Skills and Employability. And we're coming to you from the Activator Studios at RMIT in Melbourne. And I'm very pleased to say, in front of a record registered online audience of almost 800 people. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, owners of the land on which we gather here today, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also recognise their connection to country and their role in caring for and maintaining country for more than 60,000 years. I would also like to advise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander listeners and viewers that the following program and the content contained in it may contain images and voices of deceased persons. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's fair to say that this is not your typical Gen AI in higher education sort of event. This symposium will provide us all with an interactive space for all of us, guests, panelists, and of course the audience out there watching us today. And in fact, it's also rare in that we've been able to bring together employers, professional bodies, of course, and universities. And we're all exploring the needs of industry and the related professions in terms of Gen AI knowledge and the capabilities of graduates. And hopefully, at the end of it all, we will have led the charge in collectively identifying those opportunities, of course, to better connect employer needs with graduate Gen AI literacies and skills. But that's not all. The other unique factor, and one of which that we are very, very proud of here at ATN, is that we have facilitators with us, and they are ATN University's alumni. And it is indeed my great pleasure now to introduce them both to you. Welcome to our symposium, Elena Scullen-Howe, student of Bachelor of Laws at Curtin University, and also Guillaume Leroux, graduate Master Health Service Management, UniSA. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us on this wonderful day. Looking forward to hearing your great stories and, of course, those in our showcase videos and also from our panels. And now it's over to you.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Frank. As you said, I am studying my Bachelor of Laws at Curtin University, so a long way from Perth today. But I'm super excited for today's event. I've had a look at the program and it is going to be a whopper of a day. Personally, I'm a bit of a newbie to Gen AI, so I'm really eager to be exposed to today's discussions. I feel it's particularly topical in law, with there so many challenges regarding access to justice and legal representation, but also balancing how that interplays with obligations and liability as well. What about you, Guillaume?
Thank you, Elena. I am a postgraduate student from a University of South Australia. I graduated in 2023, and I was excited to be part of the first cohort of students being able to fully utilize Gen AI as part of productivity and at work and as a student. This really helped me acquire skills and capabilities in that space with a very new tool that I think is transforming knowledge work and workforce in general. And I'm very honored and excited to be here today to learn along this transition and transformation of the learning systems. You told me earlier, Elena, that you're part of the academic integrity team in your universities. I'd be interested to know how you approach integrity using Gen AI today in law.
Yeah, so I do sit on the student discipline panel at Curtin University as one of the student representatives. And you're right, it is very interesting how we have developed our approach to Gen AI in academic settings, especially considering, as I said, I haven't had much experience using it. But we do focus mainly on using software to detect it and also learning those tips and tricks, those telltale signs of when something has been artificially generated, which I'm really interested to learn more about the limitations about that and how we can actually implement it responsibly in a setting. And I'm sure you guys are as well in the audience, so please don't forget about our team's Q&A to have all of your questions answered.
Really looking for your questions. Without further ado, let me shortly introduce our key speaker, Dr. Michel Perugini. Michel is a serial entrepreneur and an oncology research expert. She is now head of commercialization at UniSA and CEO of UniSA Ventures. Michelle.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone online for listening and having me here today. I feel quite privileged actually to be giving this keynote speech. It's a great audience. It's a great audience across industry, government and academia, and I think this is a really important topic to be talking about. The topic of Gen AI can be quite divisive, but I think what's really clear is if we don't get on board as students, educators and industry, we're really going to be at a critical disadvantage. And the purpose of my talk today is to walk you through some scenarios of how Gen AI is impacting us all and talk you through my experience a little bit in terms of my trajectory from being a student in research through to an AI industry expert and back into the academic sector now. I've had a really fortunate career trajectory. I did my undergraduate in medical and pharmaceutical biotechnology at UniSA and then subsequently my PhD in medicine at University of Adelaide. And I spent around 10 years as a research scientist in oncology. And I thought that was going to be my entire career. However, in 2007, I had a really unique opportunity to explore AI. And this was before AI was cool. My partner had completed a PhD in AI and computer science, and he wanted to commercialise some AI technology from Department of Defence. And being naturally curious, I started to learn more about AI and the technologies that could apply to real-world problems and some of the areas that the Defence was using this technology for. And it was really around how do we use cognitive behavioural modelling to mimic human decision-making. We developed a company over the next 8 years in this space, and we developed what was really interesting micro-simulation platform that used AI to model and simulate decision-making of whole populations of consumers at individual levels, and then specific models around different policies or new products that we could then predict population consumer behaviour to. We had offices all around the world, worked in 6 different industries, and eventually sold that company to EY. Interestingly, when we started that company in 2007, we couldn't even use the term AI. It was actually a dirty word, so we had to call it predictive analytics. And, you know, that was partly due to the history of AI not having delivered on the expected outcomes. But during the course of that company, I learned so many skills around how to leverage AI to analyse very large and complex data sets that you just would never be able to do as a human. We could build these globally scalable models from Adelaide that could be deployed across the world without any trouble. So the AI knows no geographical boundaries. It was also during that time that AI started to re-emerge as an industry. Due to the massive advances in compute power, the lowering costs of computation and the availability of big data to be able to fuel these models that we were developing. In 2017, I then founded PressGen, an AI healthcare company that was focused again on building a global data platform in the healthcare space, but this time to solve women's health issues globally. We developed a really interesting product with that company using machine learning called Life Whisperer, which was used to analyse eggs and embryos during the IVF process to improve pregnancy outcomes for patients. This was a regulated medical device, and I, in that experience, learned firsthand some of the challenges with respect to data privacy, compliance, regulation, and for medical AI products like this. Ultimately, we brought that technology to 48 regulated markets and sold that product last year. And our AI platform is now part of a drug discovery program in a company called Cubogen. In November last year, I made the return to academia to take up the role of Head of Commercialisation at UniSA and CEO of UniSA Ventures. This is a wonderful opportunity for me to help drive research translation impact and commercial outcomes from the research at the university. And what was amazing to me coming back to the academic sector after so long was that the universities really have embraced the change of AI in their programming. They've embedded education around this type of technologies into their courses.
And from my perspective, it's really critical that the education sector keep pace with the changes in technology to ensure that the graduates that we're producing succeed and even are able to educate the industries that they move into. So I want to talk through a case study firstly to really highlight why it's so important that we engage with AI to remain relevant. In fact, I would go as far as to say that artificial intelligence is actually our key competitive advantage. AI is here to stay. It's definitely a constant. So if we look at this particular case study, here we have an inspiring career woman, Emma. She's a recent marketing graduate. Emma's constantly updating her resume, looking for new roles to move into. She's constantly iterating across her cover letters and refreshing her inbox only to find that she's not really getting any job leads. And she's wondering why she's not getting any traction. But what her job applications haven't taken into account is this crucial element, that her success depends on how well she's presenting amidst a job market that now heavily incorporates AI. So how does Emma and all job seekers tackle this barrier? Suffice to say that expectations of employers really have increased in this space, and you'll be competing against others that are utilising things like GenAI to improve the relevance of their applications. And here's some practical ways that you can really improve that process and your applications to make sure that if GenAI is actually analysing your application, it will be captured, but also to make sure that it still has that human element that's really important to contextualise your application. So using keywords and specificity, AI systems scan for specific keywords. So it's really crucial to match the language in the position descriptions with your skills. Highlighting achievements and impact. Be really specific when highlighting those achievements rather than using vague language, and use lots of metrics and data to underpin them, because that's the sort of thing that the AI will capture when it's doing its scan. Prioritise skills, include a really simple skills section that matches to those positions, and include both hard and soft skills within those. But I think the most important thing, at all costs, avoid generic AI-generated applications, because it's very obvious when something's been AI-generated and you've used it verbatim. And ultimately, your applications will go to a human once they've been scanned via AI tools. And if it lacks that personal touch, then it won't progress. And we had this example before. We were talking about using GenAI to generate a bio. I did this myself recently, and I found out that I had a whole range of qualifications that I didn't actually have. So make sure you fact check what the GenAI comes up with, because whilst it sounded amazing, it wasn't me. Our essential skills advantages are really changing in the age of AI. If we look at the overlap of skills between AI and humans, what's really clear is that our skills remain in the human factors realm of EQ, creativity, moral reasoning, and complex decision-making. AI skills are more centred around kind of the data analysis, automation, speed of computation for complex problems, and language understanding and generation. But the sweet spot in the middle of this Venn diagram is what's really important to understand. And this is where we master our human skills whilst leveraging AI. This is our augmented abilities. And it's really a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario of enhancing our ability to solve more complex problems using these technologies. And what's important here is that we are in charge. We don't hand off our roles to these AI to perform for us. We leverage those AIs to enhance our own skill base. It's merely our assistant that helps guide contextualised problems. Sorry, the contextualisation of problems is really our job as the human. And one of the most interesting realisations that I came to when running my AI companies was that people don't need to become engineers or coders or data analysts or even know how to build AI tools. I actually started learning how to code when I started my first company because I had a bit of imposter syndrome and thought, how can I possibly work in the AI sector without understanding how to code? And at that time, everyone was saying that, you know, we need more people coding. But what I realised is that my skills were not in coding. My skills were in understanding how the AI could provide advantage in solving real-world problems. And what I realised is that skills in understanding the implications of AI, how to manage the data privacy and of large global healthcare data sets, for example, how to educate regulators on risk and validation of AI, how to explain the ethical implications of AI, how to guide and direct the AI through fundamental biology, and how to talk to patients around the value of AI in the clinical setting. These were the most valuable skills that I could bring to those companies. So it's not about understanding how to code the AI, but you need to understand enough about the AI's capabilities and be literate enough to be able to apply those tools effectively into the industry that you're operating with. And without all of that knowledge that I just mentioned and the context, our AI engineers couldn't code anything that would be a useful product. I think it's fair to say that AI is definitely not the future. It's here right now, and employers just won't hire people who lack AI proficiency. I think that's fair to say. The signals from industry are really telling us that they're looking for technical AI skills, but also AI literacy. And I'm sure we'll hear much more about this in the further panels on today's sessions. In 2024, there was a 500% increase in jobs requiring AI proficiency. That's astounding, a 500% increase. And employees responded with this skill demand by actively upskilling. And LinkedIn recorded a 177% increase in AI literacy skills being added to the profiles of individuals last year. The demand for AI proficiency will only grow, and as technology undoubtedly develops, so too will our jobs and the job market. And I'll leave you with this thought, which I also find astounding. By 2030, which is only 5 years away, 70% of the job skills that we see and use today will have transformed. The use of AI and how it intertwines with our everyday lives will really only increase. It'll be there when we're in bed, monitoring our sleep patterns. It'll be there when we wake up, personalising our social media so that we can be entertained in the way that we like. And it'll be there in our jobs every day. So it's only natural that employers are not just hiring for degrees, professional experience and personality, but they're hiring for AI adaptability. Your employees will want to know not whether you can build AI tools, but whether you understand them and whether you can fact check the AI and whether you understand the biases within those AI and whether you understand how to utilise those tools by contextualising the prompts that you use in GenAI and so on and so forth. So we really need to ensure that our resumes, our job interviews and our job performance all reflect this proficiency. Instead of saying, I know AI, we need to demonstrate and show how we're utilising it and how we know how to use it. Of course, our human skills are the foundation of everything that we do, both in our personal and professional lives. And our creativity, empathy, complex decision-making, learning and agility are even more vital now that we have technologies like this. And with this in mind, building a portfolio of work to be able to demonstrate how you use AI and to what effect may just be the deciding factor in getting that new job or getting a promotion within your current role. So I'm going to step right back now and look at the difference between traditional AI and Gen AI just for a brief moment. This will help us understand how our industries, our employers are incorporating AI into their practices and processes. And neither of those are better or worse than each other, they're just different. Traditional AI is really about performing very specific predefined tasks that use machine learning algorithms or rules to be able to, replicate or automate repetitive tasks, but they lack the ability to generate new knowledge. And examples of this would be Apple's Siri or Netflix recommendation engine. Traditional AI and GenAI both definitely have their place, but GenAI is more designed to create new content rather than just processing or analysing existing data. It's all about generating novel outputs, whether it's text, images, code, music, or other forms of media, but is very much guided by us, and that's really important. We need to make sure that we understand that we are driving these GenAI models. And examples that you might recognise of GenAI models are ChatGPT and Copilot. So how are industry using these technologies? Let's look at a couple of industry case studies. And it's important to realise, and the reason that I want to talk about Life Whisperer again, which I mentioned in my introduction, it's important to realise that AI has an application far beyond the problem that it's solving from a technical perspective, and it can really impact lives and people's well-being at global scale. In 2017, as I mentioned, I co-founded a company, Prestgen, and we built these products, Life Whisperer, with a vision of making IVF less stressful, more accessible and more affordable to people globally. Our technology comprised of 2 complex algorithms that were built on global data sets of embryo images where we knew what the pregnancy outcomes of for those embryos were. And we built, using machine learning, these algorithms that could then predict for a new embryo image whether that embryo was likely to give rise to a pregnancy or not, and whether it was likely to be genetically normal. Really powerful technology, takes about 10 seconds to run an analysis, very cost effective for patients, but it can change lives. And one of the most interesting things about this technology is we built it from this globally diverse data set, and it literally worked in every IVF clinic that we put it in 48 countries. So it was very scalable technology, everywhere from the most advanced markets like Europe and the US to Trinidad and Tobago, where there were, remote needs for this type of technology. So let's look at a case study that demonstrates the importance of growing your AI proficiency into your professional life. This is 22-year-old Layla. She's a computer science graduate who's working a part-time internship at a cybersecurity company called Better Cyber. Her professional background includes volunteer work at a fashion company where she focused on website security and customer data protection. Highly adept at using AI to streamline tasks and boost her productivity, Layla quickly applied her skills to her new internship role. And the way that she did that was using AI to enhance data protection protocols by automating encryption processes. She solved company challenges using AI data analysis capabilities, and she freed up her time to focus on high-value projects by doing this. Not only in this context is Layla improving her own value and productivity, she's upskilling herself from a graduate level employee to someone much more advanced and much more experienced and able to do more complex tasks. But she's also bringing a cultural and educational change to that organisation in a way of bi-directional learning, where she's training those others in that industry that have not necessarily gone through that education in AI. Meanwhile, Beth, who's the CEO of the same company, represents a more traditional approach to work. While Layla uses AI to enhance her work, Beth relies more on her human skills, which limits her ability to manage the increasing demands of her role. Now, she's had no exposure to AI, and so she doesn't understand how to leverage that technology to improve her productivity and free up more of her time as a manager. And this situation really highlights the potential disadvantages of neglecting that training and lifelong learning around technological advancements, particularly for leaders within organisations. This case study really demonstrates how AI adeptness helps advance one's career and how a lack of it could really risk stagnating it. So when I came back to the university sector, I was really pleased, as I mentioned, to see that there was such a high recognition and alignment of the university course curriculum with the future technologies like AI. And the new Adelaide University, which is a merger of UniSA and the University of Adelaide, is really dedicated to launching the next generation of leaders towards their significant firsts. And with this front of mind, Adelaide University offers highly relevant and timely courses to ensure that students are really learning those future skills that they'll need within their employment. And one of the common core subjects that's taught to all students, no matter which course they're doing, is artificial intelligence. And this course will expose new students to new efficiencies, new challenges, new opportunities, and really teach them the essential principles around AI that they'll need to be ready for the workforce. So in closing, change is inevitable. The best way to future-proof your career is to stay curious, adaptable, and open to AI-powered opportunities. Ensure you are always upskilling with the latest technology, using it to enhance your creativity, your individualism, and your humanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I think that was fascinating approach to the subject that we're going to have today. To me, there's a lot that resonates here as we look at the workforce, and students that are changing their behaviors to adapt to the technology to filter how they get into the workforce, as well employers and experienced workers that also need to start implementing those new skills in their leadership thinking processes, and how it feels to me that critical thinking is starting to be the principal skills, right, that is required across all the different areas where technical skills are starting to be automated and augmented more and more.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Elena?
Well, I was absolutely blown away. I've never actually considered AI in some of those concepts. So it was really interesting to hear you speak. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. But before we jump into our Q&A, as I said, I was really interested. So I want to start with a selfish question for myself before we take them from the audience, if that's okay. But in terms of balancing AI and humanity, what are the main barriers and opportunities in your experience to upscaling and expanding a GenAI platform across healthcare, academia, and other industries?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it's really challenging because it's a complex area where we need to understand the capabilities, but also the limitations of the technology that we're using. And we need to make sure that humanity is always at the forefront of how we're driving these tools. And, there's a lot of biases in these types of models, and we've got to be really careful with data privacy, really careful that we're representing the right things in the models that we're utilising, and really careful that we're not entirely reliant on AI to do our jobs. I think AI is a really amazing opportunity for us to master our human skills, but only if we take the lead in how we utilise them and not rely on them fully.
There's an online question that I bring to you. I think that's very interesting because as an employer yourself in that space, you have a very interesting perspective. What kinds of AI trainings are employers wanting to see? And how much of these are online micro-credentials or longer qualification or experiences?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So we had this experience when we were building our companies that when we were hiring for people into AI engineering roles, we started off looking for people who were doing purist AI courses in machine learning, deep learning, with those really purist AI skills. But what we actually found was that graduates that had a base degree and then had some level of training in AI were actually better equipped to be able to implement that AI within the context of our company's needs. And I think the reason that is because if you have a physics degree or an engineering degree, you've learnt the discipline around the process of those functions, and then having the ability to overlay knowledge in that AI space is really valuable within that context of more traditional, engineering process design, for example. And that's probably a little bit specific to the fact that we're software-based businesses. But we found that really helpful. So we started employing people with these joint capabilities around, a specific discipline plus training in AI, which is, I think, exactly where the academic sector is going in terms of embedding these kind of knowledge and discipline within different course structures.
I love that. So really taking it back to the foundational skills and making sure that we understand the why and the limitations of what we're using. Another question from the audience. As a job seeker, how can I leverage GenAI to apply for jobs without my applications coming across as too GenAI and without losing my unique voice?
Yeah, it's all around personalisation, isn't it? It's all around making sure that you're true to your personal brand within your applications. I think that's really important. So by all means, use GenAI to come up with a structure or help you kind of concisely, narrate some of those aspects of your cover letter. But I think you really need to go through and make sure that you understand this is my voice and this is me who I'm representing. And at the end of the day, even if AI tools are being used to screen your applications, which is why you need to be aware of it, you will ultimately be interviewed by a human, and you want to bring that personal human element across. That's what's going to get you across the line with a job.
Very interesting. And a bit on a similar vein, but sort of changing goals here. For researchers, could this job search / HR use case of AI impact things like grant applications? And should researchers be using the same strategies we've just discussed for job seekers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely it can help with grant applications and all of those types of areas. And more, if you think of the AI as more an information gatherer, it's kind of an assistant. So if you were to work with someone who was helping you put together a grant application or helping you to source new information for a job application, then that's how you need to consider the AI. It's kind of really there to assist you, but what's really important is how you sort of prompt and guide the information that you get from that AI is really the critical piece.
So I'm really hearing transferability of both skills and of application of it. Yeah. We do have another question in. We've got quite a few coming in. So thinking about using AI in the workplace, is having AI tools now the same category of change as statisticians getting calculators in the workplace when they were invented? How is AI like and not like a calculator?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a really interesting analogy. I think it's a lot like a calculator, actually. I think it's like a calculator on steroids. I kind of reminisce back to my PhD days when, we were doing all the fundamental biological testing at the lab bench, right? And bioinformatics had only just started coming into place, and we started having sort of more of these large data sets that we could mine. And I remember my supervisor saying, oh, you're going to need to learn how to do bioinformatics, right? And I'm like, well, okay. So, that seems like a really sort of, advanced skill for what I was trained to do. But it was really that nexus of having nothing to having something that allowed us to look at those really large data sets very easily. And I think the calculator is the same thing for calculations, saves a lot of time, increases accuracy. And the AI is really similar in the now, that it's allowing us to analyse vast quantities of quantitative and qualitative data that we just can't possibly do as humans. So it's just the brute force ability of these types of technologies to create efficiency and trawl through these large data sources is just astounding. So it is similar in nature to the calculator, but a lot more advanced.
Oops, sorry. I really like this analogy. I think to me as well, it mirrors a little bit the challenge between, content creation and thinking assistants, right? A calculator, you wouldn't ask it to say, give me whatever equals 10. You have to give it an input. An input is very important to have a very specific output, which just helps do the calculation. And I think that AI tools like GenAI is very similar. You need to understand that the information comes from the human and it's assisting, right, this increased output.
I love that analogy. That's actually made everything make so much more sense to me in terms of how to use it and how to apply it, thinking about the fact that what comes out is based on what you put in, and you've got to put in effectively the right equation to get an accurate and helpful answer. Next question. Considering how quickly the AI tech is evolving and how quickly we need the new generation of uni students and workers to have these skills, are there opportunities to strengthen outreach to secondary skills, despite the fact we seem to be simultaneously trying to slow tech innovation down in our schools? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I would argue that even at primary school level, we need to start developing some educational understanding of these future technologies, because if we don't keep, as an education sector, the pace of change aligned with the pace of change of technology, we're not going to have students that are equipped to be able to learn and effectively implement these technologies. And it's a critical advantage in, the global world that we live in to be able to do this.
Well, taking on that then, sort of jumping off of that, what are the key opportunities and limitations for graduates in terms of utilising GenAI as they both go through their university studies and jump into the workforce?
Yeah, I think it's all the things that we spoke about. Sort of leveraging these tools gives you an advantage in terms of efficiency, in terms of being able to do things that are perhaps more complex than we would otherwise be able to do as humans. So really augmenting our sort of human skills. And I think it's going to be a requirement moving into the workforce that we have literacy around these technologies, understand how to use them to our best advantage, and become really proficient and hone more in on our creative, complex problem-solving skills, which is what we're naturally really good at and what the AI is not so good at. So I think it's really a meeting of the minds of where the technology can help us to gain advantage. And if we look in Australia, it's actually really interesting because, AI and technologies like this know no geographical borders, right? The scale that you can achieve with these types of technologies is essentially limitless. So we're not at a geographical disadvantage. So there's a lot of emergence of AI industry here in Australia because of that reason, and a lot of people developing these products that can be sold globally and impact people on a global scale right from here in Australia, which I think is an amazing opportunity.
That's very interesting. I love talking about the upscaling. Now, we are getting the signal to wrap up. So thank you so much for your time and for your insights. It's been lovely having you here and hearing all of your experience. But in terms of the next segment, it's chaired by the distinguished Professor Marnie Hughes-Warrington, AO. Marnie is the Provost and Chief Academic Officer of the University of South Australia. In 2022, Marnie was made an Officer in the Order of Australia for her contribution to higher education, governance, leadership and mentoring. She has a global profile as a philosopher and as a historian. Her current work looks at how machines write histories and the nature of AI as a historical discipline. So this one's going to be a great discussion, and we are so interested to hear these different perspectives as they discuss Gen AI skills for the workplace, what's needed now and into the future.
Good afternoon, and I hope you can all hear me, and it's my complete pleasure to welcome you to this next panel, which I think is just the perfect segue from Michelle's wonderful keynote. Michelle's prepared us all to think about what employers are going to be looking for, and I'm absolutely honoured to bring a panel of employers, incredible industries before you all to hear from their side how things are shaping up for them, how they're working with AI, how they're working with it in lots of different ways, and how they're helping to transform the economy and society. I'm joined today by an absolutely incredible group of people. I want to acknowledge firstly Jane Adams, who's the Executive General Manager, Human Resources at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Welcome to you, Jane. I've got Odile Shepherd, who's People and Culture Director at Wotton Kearney, which is a law firm. I've got Amina Crooks. Welcome to you, Odile. Amina Crooks, who's Senior Manager, Customer Data and AI at Accenture. Welcome to you, Amina. And then finally, I've got Troy Tobin, who's from Research and Development. He's a Supervisor, Research and Development, at Rising Sun Pictures. Warm welcome to you all. It's just amazing. We've all been listening to the keynote, and here's your opportunity to come back. I'm going to kick off with some questions, and we will have some opportunity for Q&A towards the end of this panel. So I'm going to kick it off firstly with you, Jane. I want us to set the scene for us. Where's Australia at in terms of Gen AI from the perspective of a big employer like you? What does it look like?
Yeah, thank you. I always think when you're asked to set the scene, that great quote from Justin Trudeau a few years back, the pace of change has never been this fast, yet it'll never be this slow again, is probably the right framing for where we are in terms of Gen AI in Australia. I think we have got ambition as a country, and certainly in CBA we have huge ambition to implement Gen AI to help with customers, to grow revenue, to make our workforce more productive. We have huge ambition, but we are lacking a level of talent. And it's hard to hire in people with Gen AI expertise because it's so new and it's so fresh. We can hire a few sort of senior level AI experts. We absolutely can access data scientists, and we have some great software engineers, but ultimately we're having to upskill and learn as we go more than anything else, because we don't have a 10-year history of people being educated, qualified and ready for industry in this Gen AI world. It's just moved so quickly. We are playing catch up, I think, in terms of education, and it's a lot of accountability on both individuals to learn and a lot of accountability on industry to help upskill in this space. So it's moving so fast would be my set the scene call.
Jane, I just think I heard about 800 people just go, I'm not in this alone. Thank you so much for opening the seed for us. I'm going to come to you, Amina, because you picking up on that point, your business is actually transforming itself using AI. So, what's it like to go through that transformational process? You really embraced Gen AI. What's happened, and then how are you working with other businesses to help them to get on board and embrace the change that Jane's just talked about?
Yeah, so similar to Jane, we also are on a journey of reinvention and upskilling. So we've put more than 600,000 of our employees through AI fundamentals and tools. And in that reinvention, I guess I would just highlight the audience to students coming into the workforce that while there are some amazing consumer tools out there, when you go to work in organizations, when we talk about a reinvention of AI, it's not just in implementing existing products or tools that have AI in them. It is actually renovating the business and the business units and the infrastructure. So the analogy I would give is, yes, you can hand everyone a torch, and that's really handy to see in the dark. Imagine putting electricity through a house that doesn't have it. That is, it's a renovation, and it means you need process designers and end-to-end sort of re-engineering of all of the tasks and systems and things that get done. And so that takes talent, that takes creativity, that takes innovation, that takes resilience. And so it's not just, as was mentioned, the technical skills, but it's all the skills, and it happens across an organization. So it doesn't matter whether you're working in data and tech. If you're working in human resources or marketing or finance, then you go through that reinvention and you have the expertise to help reimagine the future. So I think it's an exciting journey. I think we do need more people that are, becoming more aware and involved. And to what's been said, I think it will open up a lot of jobs. I think, yes, in the near future, it's estimated at least 10% of more of what all of us do will be affected by AI in terms of tasks. So we do have to understand it, but we also have to think about how we want to design it for our future.
So, Amina, you've just painted the picture, which is really an invitation for all of us, isn't it? That if I come into a business from the front desk all the way through the business, it's transformed. But that means that that's an opportunity for all of us to be part of this, part of that bigger ecosystem of AI. Am I right in hearing that?
Absolutely. I mean, think of it when we first went through digital technologies. It wasn't about putting up websites everywhere. It was digitizing a whole bunch of processes and tasks and things that we do in our lives. And so that's a similar thing in the next 5 years, maybe even earlier, organizations will be completely data and AI fueled and driven end to end. And it will become common sort of literacy or fluency that all of us understand to some extent what it means, maybe not the technical bit, but how to use it and augment ourselves with it. And there'll be new jobs created because of it.
That's awesome. And you talked about using the tools. I'm now going to go across to Troy. We use tools, but we also have the opportunity to make them. And folks, if you don't know, every time you go to the picture, you go and see Furiosa. You go and see some of the Marvel films. He's got some of the pictures in the background there. Some of these tools, they're not all coming from offshore, are they? They're being made here as well. So Troy, talk to us about making AI in Australia and some of the technical advances, including machine learning, yeah?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess like our avenue into machine learning and AI is slightly different to the GenAI that we've been talking about in terms of ours is a very much more specific use case, I'm going to say. And it started back in 2018, so quite a while ago now, where we engaged the Australian Institute of Machine Learning to see how machine learning could benefit the visual effects industry. And we engaged 2 doctors there, and we were working on a couple of films at the time, and we decided that we could use machine learning to do face replacements on, say, stunt actors to make them look like the principal actor. There's things we've been doing for a long time traditionally, but this is something that we thought that machine learning could help out with. And so back in 2018, we sort of proved that was feasible. And since then, we've seen the progression of machine learning and what that means for us as a business, our clients, right, and how the evolution has taken place. And so we went from 2 people back in 2018 to now we have a team of 15 embedded machine learning engineers here at RSP. And I think we've worked on more than 25, 26 films or something that you probably all would have seen. And so we're not in the business of taking off-the-shelf machine learning, AI, and integrating it. We're in the business of generating our own models, our own architectures, our own innovations. And so it's interesting to see what that means for the business, right? We're not just an isolated group of machine learning engineers. We have to integrate and talk to and collaborate the rest of the business, So it's not just this isolated pocket of machine learning. The entire business has had to grow, from sales and business development to the artists that are using our tools. And so it's that building of the intuition around the machine learning, not just the experts in creating it, but the artists and the people selling it to be able to talk about it, to be able to use it, and to be able to really, really engage with it and get the results that we need. So like in terms of machine learning and creating something, it's definitely not just this isolated like microcosm of a team doing it. The whole business has to grow. And I guess one of the things that we've talked about it, and the Keynote touched on as well, like we don't see it as replacing jobs. We see it as something that can amplify. It can help us do something we couldn't do before. And we as a business, we embrace that. Our clients embrace that as well. And so it's this really cool, useful tool that you can bring to enhance workflows, creative output, and things like that, which is really great to see.
It's just great to hear from you, Troy, because I think some of us assume that faces being put on top of things is about deep fakes, but you've just actually reminded us that we can use AI for safety. That, for instance, we actually just want to generate a safer workplace, and so the application's really deep. And we're building up a picture here. So we've heard about transformation in the financial services sector, which is one of the oldest sectors in Australia's history. We've talked about businesses helping other businesses, so the BDB that Amina has given us a sense. We've got the creative and cultural output in Australia really walks above its weight, Troy, in terms of those technical Oscars that you guys have been associated with, the Emmys. I think 4 of the 5 Emmys you were nominated, you're associated with those film titles this year. So you can see Australia really, really getting in there and contributing in some key sectors. And now we're going to come to a deal. So law, Tell us about being the first law firm that's really embraced Gen AI on that scale, because I think some people might have some assumptions that some industries will jump in there fast and others might take a bit more time. So talk us through how have you embraced Gen AI in your firm?
Marnie, I'm not going to lie, law firms usually sit in that second category around slow to move. We're not known for being the trailblazers really in terms of embracing technological change or advancement, but I think all law firms or any professional services firms have the objective around delivering value to clients. And to work out how to do that, we decided we needed to work smarter. And working smarter has prompted us to invest in Cicero. So, yes, you're right. We're one of the first law firms to invest in AI. We're at the sort of start of our journey. It's an exciting time, but it's also quite a scary time because Cicero actually helps us. It's almost like the digital twin for our lawyers. It helps us to take the toil out of some routine tasks, and which gives our lawyers time back to focus on delivering value. But what it actually has done is it's actually challenging us to rethink the traditional lawyer pathway. A lot of our early career lawyers cut their teeth on some really important tasks, and whilst AI won't replace those tasks, what we're really focused on right now is ensuring that our early career lawyers and our talent actually understand how to do it the old way. They're learning how to do it in the AI-enhanced way, and that requires them to actually have some really important skills around critical thinking. They're required to, be adaptive. They need to bring their growth mindset to what is essentially kind of a test and pilot experience right now. But we choose to see the glass half full version of things. So it is exciting, but, we're just at the start of our journey and working it out. And I imagine most law firms are sitting back and watching how we go. They tend to jump on the bandwagon when there's an exemplar, and we hope that's us.
And for those of you old enough to know, don't wait for beta and VHS to slug it out. Get in there now. Find out how you can get engaged. So I'm going to switch it. While Michelle was talking then, you were all nodding. And the moment where you're all nodding most furiously in agreement was where she said, don't just get GenAI to write your application for you because we can tell. And you were all smiling and nodding at me as that point was being made. It was really quite a powerful moment across all your different sectors. You saw that. So I'm going to put this question to all of you. How do we, in our sector, higher education, because we're also running to catch up with this as well, we need to transform ourselves and be part of this. How do we best prepare so that when we want to come and work with your firms, or we want students to come and work at your firms or work in partnership with you, what are you looking for in this space? How does higher ed embrace this opportunity? So have you got any tips or advice for us from your experience about things that you'd be looking for, about how we can better partner with you, how students can better get that application to you, how we can help one another? So I'm going to go to you first, if you don't mind, Jane. Let's come back to you and hear from you.
Yes, certainly. And just a bit of framing for what we look for in our employees or our workforce with Gen AI. We believe every single person in the bank needs to have Gen AI literacy, and we're actually putting that into our skills framework at the moment. But there's a difference between those who work with AI, who may just be using tools like Copilot or various models to help them serve customers or be more productive, versus those who lead with AI. And we have done quite a lot to educate 300 of our leaders so they're making choices on where AI should be applied and what benefits. And those who build with AI, which is where you really get to your software engineers, your data scientists, those individuals who are actually building bespoke Gen AI solutions to address our business problems. So everyone, if they're applying to work at a bank, and a bank of 50,000 people has at least 15,000 technologists. So think quite a substantial technology workforce in a bank. If you're a technology graduate, you need to show evidence and thinking of using tools that are generating and building AI. And if you are not a graduate of technology, but a graduate more broadly in marketing or any of those disciplines, we still want to see that you can work with AI and the tools and the experiences in your research, your projects, your personal life. But also, don't underestimate those skills that Odile was talking about, judgment, critical thinking, problem solving. It's never more important now to have critical thinking and problem solving when you're trying to integrate human input and GenAI input and actually make a call and a decision on what the right next step is. So absolutely, I believe humans plus GenAI tools are a supercharged employee, but it's also those skills like critical thinking, problem solving that we're really looking for evidence of when we're recruiting.
That's fantastic. Let's go to you, Amina. How can we better partner with you? How can we better prepare?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with my panelists about having those critical thinking skills and problem solving and life, like being able to learn and constantly. This is a constantly evolving space and it's moving quickly. I think it's being able to apply it in whatever it is that you're doing. So to, again, sort of reinforce the idea that when we say Gen AI or AI, you don't have to be technical, but I think having the bridge between what is the implementation or how you bring that sort of technology to life and create value is really important. So it's in anything that people do. So if I think of our sort of line of business, you could be someone that focuses in on workforce transformation and you understand the tools and how to help with adoption and change management, because none of these technologies work if people don't understand how to use them. You could be working in finance or banking or telco, and the use and value drivers of these technologies will differ by industry. So what might help in one environment for using AI for network optimization might be different in another, which is around fraud or security. So I don't think there's like one path. I think it's everyone having to take the step into this realm within whatever they're doing, which means you don't have to be a certain thing that you're not inclined to be. You just have to do what you're passionate about and find how you can find the way that leads towards the future roles and jobs in that area, whether it's to do with risk and compliance or finance or operation modeling, whatever that is. I'd say to students coming in to just embrace new technologies, problem solving, critical thinking, and importantly, test things out. I think experience always trumps sort of just the general understanding. If you've had some trial and errors or you've tried things out, that's always the best way to actually know that you can apply those skills and you have evidence to back your knowledge.
You're giving us great advice there, really, Amina, that all of us, regardless of what we teach, regardless of what we learn, that the technology's in there and we can all make a go at getting in touch with those technologies, thinking about how they can support what we do, but also transform what we do. So that's great encouragement for all of us. Troy, what do you think? How can we get on board? How can we better partner? How can we better prepare students?
Well, in terms of better preparing, I'm going to parrot what's already been said, but I'm going to add my own little flair to it. When I'm interviewing people, the things that, apart from, obviously I'm looking for like machine learning engineer technologists, you know, and the thing that I always tell people that I'm looking for is obviously the base level of understanding of machine learning, AI and things like that. But on top of that, the things that I would say stand out the most is the proactiveness. AI, machine learning, it's a field that's rapidly changing all the time. There's always something new, and just, you know, being able to find a path through all the noise is something that's super valuable, you know. The critical thinking, I feel like we've said it about 20 times now, but the critical thinking is super important. Obviously, you can't just take the output of any of these things and just hope for the best. You need to actually put some sort of thought into what's coming out of that, whether it be you know, like a chat GPT thing, or if it's an image or whatever else, have some sort of critical thinking about what you're looking at and seeing, and then problem solving. What I see and what I get the most pride out of and like satisfaction at work is when I see the machine learning team sitting down solving a problem together. And that's why our team's so successful. That's why clients come to us, is because of that rapid problem solving and be able to take something that was unknown and get a known solution out of it, right? And so anything that students and education can do to bring problem solving to the forefront, have people actually prepare for that when they're applying for jobs and not just say, hey, I've done X, Y, Z, right? X, Y, Z, great accomplishments, but I want to know how you got there. What happened when things didn't go to plan, because things aren't always, especially with machine learning, you don't just train a model and it just works all the time, There's all of these, it didn't work, but how can I make it better? How can I solve this problem? How can I, for the client, especially for us, let's say it's producing images, it needs to work on every frame. We can't say it works 75% of the time. Those 25 frames, well, too bad, the movie's going to look terrible. So that problem solving and being able to take like I said, the unknown to a known is super important. And that's something that I would very much advocate for.
Oh, Troy, you just, I'm a philosopher. You've just got me excited that I could contribute in my own way to an Academy Award or an Emmy. I'm just so thrilled that we can all do our bit and focus on problem solving. That's just brilliant. Thank you very much for that advice. Let's go to Odile. What do you think? How can we partner with you? How can we help you? How can we prepare students?
Well, look, this is a public service announcement for all the students on the call. I can tell when AI has written your cover letter. And I'm sorry to say, your academics might be off the charts and you've done some exceptional stuff at uni and you've got a really broad and varied CV. But if your cover letter doesn't indicate who you are as a person, which is a real shame because I think the best organisations can actually see that, and that actually means something to WK. When it comes down to it, we're going to hire you for your attitude, and your attitude should actually be reflected in your cover letter. So when we see a ChatGPT CV, there are long hyphens and there are Zs in your words, and unfortunately you go straight to the no pile. And when organisations like ours get hundreds of applications for only 30 positions, we've got to be ruthless. And it's a shame because there's such talent out there. So that's my 2 cents for students. As best you can, be yourselves, and look, use ChatGPT intelligently. For universities and certainly law faculty, I mean, some of the representatives I've spoken to over the last few months actually get it. They get the need to modernise the programs to reflect the world that we're in now. Some of these programs were devised years ago. So not only the universities, but also the professional bodies that actually enable our lawyers or law students to get their certificates to practice. They're all looking at this. They're embedding subjects into their curriculums around resilience, critical thinking, working smarter, all the attributes that all of the panelists have described now. So to the extent that you can embed those things in subjects and in opportunities on campus, we'd be grateful. I mean, as an organisation that has learning at its core, and to be a learning organisation, you need to outlearn your competitors. Our job is to ensure that whoever we bring through, but particularly our early career talent, as I said, we hire for attitude and we train for skill. So it takes a village to raise a really good lawyer. It starts at uni. I love what Michelle said, even in considering it at the higher education, or at least the secondary education level. But I think everybody's got a really important role to play.
Okay, well, we're getting some great questions coming in, and I'm going to start working through those now. I'm going to stick with you for a moment, Odile, and then I've got questions for all of you, which is fantastic. So, Odile, we had a decision February 2025 that GenAI can't be used to prepare expert reports unless prior leave's been obtained from the court. How's it going in terms of the use of AI? We were aware some announcement recently about where AI can be used, not used in court. What's your take on how it's going, not just within firms, but in the judicial use of AI?
WK was actually one of the contributors to, I think there was a Supreme Court practice note. Our head of our managing partner of operations, made a submission actually just to clarify and to verify our use of Cicero, and to ensure that it was actually being used to assist with fact-finding, to help our lawyers actually do their thinking. I mean, we get paid to provide advice. And whilst AI helps to enhance the way that we work, it's certainly not a replacement. So it actually creates, as I said earlier, time and space for big thinking. We're about to launch an AI Academy internally. And I love what Jane said earlier. We have a function focused on our leaders in terms of leading an AI-safe culture, and a foundations module that actually ensures that our people understand the ethical use of AI. We use Cicero, we use LexisNexis AI for research. We also use Microsoft Copilot in pockets of the business, and we're considering rolling that out to our entire workforce. Attending those sessions and understanding the firm's expectations of them so that we are doing the right thing is their license to play. We haven't enabled access for everybody. There are certain guardrails that we've imposed on the business and on our people, and that is essentially one of the things that we're really focused on in terms of how we adopt this throughout the business.
That's really important. It's interesting working with a lot of partners and firms. They'll often talk about technical authority, but you've intimated trust authority is really important. Their safety authority is really critical. We'll come back to that one, I think, in time, but I'm going to come to you, Jane. Given how big your firm is, my sense is that maybe off the shelf is not everything you need. We've got a question here about opportunities for people to work in there to actually make sure that the tools are actually aligned to the business. Do they come straight off the shelf and work, or do you guys have to do the work of adapting them to the business?
Very mixed. I think the base level sort of productivity type tools we can pretty much pick up off the shelf. So even GitHub Copilot for coding support for our engineers, off the shelf. Pretty much. We use Office Copilot across the board. We use a number of other AI tools, whether it be embedded in our software as a service. So even in some of the learning we create, we use Synthesia-generated imagery and videos and so on. So anything for productivity, we can pretty much plug and play, but the majority of our GenAI work is actually touching customer data, is actually there to support, for example, reduction of scams and fraud, intercept early, understand how to manage. We have financial crimes, which is making sure that people who are banking with us are doing it for honest reasons and honest purposes. So again, it's helping use GenAI tooling to screen and stop and manage some of those things, which are very much home built, using things like a Claude model or using, some of the existing content that has been developed by external partners. We certainly partner with Anthropic, Microsoft, AWS. We're not afraid to partner, but we do have to do quite a lot of building for our own use cases and for what banking sector needs. But we will definitely partner and plug and play with what we can.
Thank you very much. Now, Amina, it's a pretty busy world out there at the moment. So not only is AI moving along really rapidly and GenAI is you get an update every day from what's going on, but the geopolitics of the world is really crackling with a lot of energy right now. I've said it's transactional energy. There's a lot out there. And given everything that's going on, you've got lots of options to work with people, lots of products, lots of people promising their services, but a bit tricky to know, who's going to be the right person. So how do we figure out who to trust when we're working with to transform firms in the way that we've talked about? When you come in the front door, the receptionist is there and excited about it and really embracing the change, right through to the people working perhaps in the groups that might not be on the front desk. How do we know who to trust to work with our business transformations? You have a lot of experience in this space, and you see, because you've got workplaces across the world, you know how busy this world is right now. How do we figure it out? How do we know who to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I'd sort of say just to kind of go to what Jane was saying, when organizations are coming about this reinvention and transformation that they're doing, it's done in a very strategic way. So there's a lot of decisions that are made within the leadership level as to what this roadmap means. So it's very long-term planning that needs to go into these investments, which is, a big amount of it, because the decisions that go into this when we talk about vendors or partnerships fit into that entire roadmap. So you're planning out, where are you going to invest? Where are the best places to do this reinvention and this sort of re-engineering and design process? And that will vary by business as to where they decide to put the money, because they have to make those decisions. The talent and workforce that has been spoken about, which organizations are creating their own academies or ways of doing that to help make this journey successful. The data and architecture technology that's going to drive that. And that's where they make up these decisions. What do they buy? What do they build? And what do they borrow? And that comes into any decision that would be happening in any of the periods of technology transformation that we've had, where you go through sort of a decision-making framework. And that includes a number of criteria around where your data is being stored, what is the sort of security that vendor provides you so that your data doesn't go into training sets and models, whether it's open source, closed source, what's best for your existing infrastructure so that you're not creating new investments. So all of those things come into that decision. I think there's options. So I think it's an opportunity for organizations to make those choices and to figure it out. And I think all of those things need to be considered, which they do. They consider sort of the privacy, the data privacy, where the data is stored, and all those things. So it's a complex decision-making process that happens at a board and leadership level when they go on to these investments and journeys. I'd say that when we've had discussions about these consumer tools, there is a difference when we're talking about organizations in Australia, like law firms and banks that are doing this at enterprise level, that these are not consumer tools. These are enterprise tools that are already made for enterprises that meet criteria of security, the cloud and things like that, which we already have in place, because AI has been being used in these organizations prior to GenAI coming onto the platform. And so these organizations do have those processes in place, so they can leverage those frameworks and they're not starting from scratch.
That's great advice. It's reminding us that we have the governance structures in place. We've got experience with enterprise architecture. We've got experience with IT transformational projects prior to GenAI. There's a couple of hundred at least GenAI tools out there. But we have a lot of experience to draw upon to think about the transformations we go and to figure out what criteria we'd use to trust. That's great advice. Now, Troy, I swear I didn't write this question, but I'm grateful for this question, because it's actually a reminder that we're not just talking about people coming from school. We're proudly part of contribution to higher education, when very many of our students are not school leavers. They are people that are thinking about changing career. They might have started a place. They're looking to upskill or to add to their degree. I've got a question here. I want to go into an AI field, but I don't have an IT degree and I don't have coding skills. Is it disco done? What advice would you give to somebody who wants to actually get into AI? And, you might want to answer the question from the technical point of view, technical AI and non-technical AI, if you want to.
Yep, sure.
Coding,
well,
to code or not to code?
Well, I think so. I mean, as I mentioned before, so us as a business introducing ML into the business didn't just mean we had an isolated team of machine learning practitioners. It has meant that everyone across the board has had to build up knowledge of machine learning, know how to either use it or talk about it, right? And that's from artists to supervisors to business development, everyone, right? So in my mind, and we can see from everyone that's spoken so far, AI is everywhere and it's going to be everywhere. So to transition into an AI-based role, I don't think it necessarily means that you have to have coding skills. You could, depending on how far into an employment career people are, there's going to be opportunities to transition to adopt and embrace more of the AI-based tooling, and we even saw that internally where we've had to introduce new roles in the business to help integrate machine learning, to be a bridge between machine learning and artists, to be a bridge between machine learning and sales, So I'm going to say it all depends, right? I'm going to say there's lots of opportunities from non-machine learning technical side to still work and embrace on an AI sort of role, right? So like we now have people who came from creative, weren't machine learning practitioners, and now they are like instrumental in our machine learning capability, right? So they've built that knowledge, they've built that intuition. It comes back to the enthusiasm and proactiveness and really like just jumping into it, And like we often hear lots of, I guess, fear around AI and things like that. It's not like that. It doesn't have to be like that. And I think some of that fear comes from the unknown, And so if someone wants to get into AI, just understanding and being open-minded and sort of getting rid of that fear and just saying, okay, what can it actually do? What benefits can we have? And explore that, And it's gonna have benefits in all sorts of industries. Again, I'm from visual effects, so I can only speak at that. But we've got more jobs in the business now. We have more sales opportunities. So I think the transition for someone to jump into an AI role is definitely achievable with the right mindset. From a coding point of view, I mean, there's so many resources out there from the universities, just online. There's so many courses. Obviously, it's a big knowledge base, right? So it's going to be hard to navigate. But then I'm going to say, like, reach out to people, find people who are in that space and reach out to them. It's something that, I mean, if there's students listening as well, I remember when I was a student, I thought, just like, how can I reach out to these people? Like, they got no idea who I am. But like now being like in the sort of place where I can help people, like we do it more than you'd think, Like we have industry nights where we talk about machine learning to graduates that are coming up. I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever else, and like I'm happy to talk to people, and I'm sure there's so many people out there that would be as well. So finding that niche that someone's interested in, and finding people that are in that and reaching out, I think can be super valuable as well. So yeah, definitely get involved. I say.
Get on board, everyone get on board. All right, let's change tack slightly. Ethical AI, responsible AI. And again, I just confess I didn't write this question, but gee whiz, what a great one. So we often learn about, students are taught about assessments and we're taught about academic integrity. So not cheating, being honest, all of the things you talked about when you write a cover letter, it's yours. It's not the machine that wrote it for you. But, in other ways, how can we broaden understanding of ethical uses of AI in workplace experiences or in what we teach in universities? So let's come to responsible or ethical AI. Is there like one key point or two key points that you would like us to have front of mind when you think of that word? What does it most associate for you? And have you got any advice for us about thinking about ethical AI and responsible AI? So who'd like to go first? I'm going to put it out there because you're all thinking really hard here. Who'd like to jump in?
I'm happy to give a headline view on this. Responsible AI, that we call it internally, is so important. And I think someone mentioned, tickets to get the tools, like, license to operate. Very much completing responsible AI, learning is a license to operate. But there are also models and frameworks that we have to work through for anything we're building to make sure that we're considering the responsibility and the potential unintended consequence or use case for anything we're building. I always think possibly the best way to think about it is if it went wrong and it was a headline on your news feed on your phone in the morning, did you do everything you could to not have that happen? And I just think that headline test is a constant one. We will take a long time to perfect and build models before they're launched into any form of production, because that test and learn and responsible checks and making sure everything is working the way it should and not working the way it shouldn't is really critical. So I think that headline test is a good way to think about it.
Headline test, that's great. Okay, who else has got some advice on this area? Amina, go for it.
I'll first say that I think that's great advice. And in our organization, you have to do compliance training before you can use any AI tool. So I think that should just be standard and sort of what's required. But I brought in what I would tell students beyond just, sort of thinking about the tools in a work environment. AI, as we've mentioned, is everywhere. And I would think about it in that macro level in terms of what it means by countries and how they decide to use AI in the future, around governance at even, people have heard of the EU Act, as well as other international organizations that are coming up with these regulations. We think about it as an end-to-end supply chain. Australia has minerals and resources. There's a chip war. I mean, there's lots of different angles, from philosophical, economical, geopolitical, to think about this in terms of data centers and infrastructure. So there's really something in there for everyone. You can come at it from energy in terms of that, or even in terms of the environment. So I think, again, it kind of reinforces the fact that you don't have to think of AI as this little niche, tiny little thing that it is. It really is whatever your interests are. You can add value to this in the future, and you will bring a different perspective. And also, just to the highlight, it is actually having people from different disciplines and different perspectives that will create the best outcomes and value from these technologies. Having people think about it, if you're an anthropologist or a philosopher or an economist, will be hugely valuable to the workforce and how we design and build and use these technologies.
I mean, that's just great. And I'm just, thinking in there, for instance, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues, for instance, they're going to be really important with all of us to think about data sovereignty, to recognise connection to country, to make sure we look after the place. I'm glad you brought up, that AI is about thinking about the environmental, connections that we have, that it is all those disciplines that we can bring in. So that gives us a sense. That's a broad invitation again. Thank you. Odile or Troy, got any advice on ethical, responsible AI? Troy, come off mute.
I'll go. I mean, one of the things that being a company that creates machine learning capability, one of the big things that we've had to do is introduce policy and frameworks around, there's tons of models out there that do all sorts of things, they're not all fit for purpose, they're not all commercially usable, and things like that. And so just understanding, for people to understand that just because it exists doesn't mean you can use it, when it comes to machine learning, it's a bit different to just software use, where, the software license is the important thing, right? When it comes to machine learning, it's software license, it's the model license, it's also the ancestry of the data that was used to train that thing, and something that we have to be cognizant of is it all fit for purpose, and can we say that, yes, the data is unencumbered, the model's unencumbered, everything is all above board and is fit for purpose, Luckily, we train most of our models ourselves on either data that we own or the client owns, so we don't that's not the majority of the problem for us, but I can see that it would be for a lot of people. So just having that understanding, going from research space to commercial space, and what that actually means, and how to validate and check and have proper checks and procedures in to make sure that we're everything's above board and is being used and applied ethically, I guess, is where I come from.
Yeah, totally. That's excellent. I could see, Odile, you're really nodding there as people were talking. Would you like to chip in? I think you'd have some important things to say here too, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, policy, you can imagine with the law, it's right at the heart of everything. And, establishing those guardrails about how to use it and how not to use it is important. I mean, the nature of legal practice is such that it's supervised generally, and particularly for those early years. I mean, AI, as I said, it takes the toil out of the work, but when it comes down to reviewing a lawyer's product, it always is anchored in, well, tell us about the source materials. AI just helps us to work smarter. It doesn't actually mean that we're going to take our eye off the ball. In fact, we can't. We deal with risk and compliance all the time, and we're obligated to ensure that we're working ethically, and we have stakeholders that we need to do right by, including working for government departments. So supervised legal practice, a policy that sits at the core, the license and ticket to play, and those things are all really important in terms of making sure that we are using AI responsibly in the business.
That's wonderful. Now, we've still got some questions coming in. There's one on professional organisations, and I know we have a panel on that coming soon, and we'll all hang out for that. But there's one about entry-level jobs, and I've got a little bit of an anecdote there. At the Museum Discovery at the University of South Australia in North Terrace at the moment, there's an exhibition called Forever, and you can actually go and do a job interview with an avatar for an eternal life company in 2040. You can put yourself forward and you go, and I went and did my job interview with the avatar, which I found really quite entertaining, and was told that I would be hired by the Department of Quantum Studies as a memory reconstruction engineer. And somebody with a history background, I thought I obviously did well in the interview and thought, that's fantastic. So I'm set. I'm going to work in quantum memory. The Vice-Chancellor was with me, and he won't laugh if he told everybody about this. He did his job interview and he was offered the job of receptionist in 2040. So I think it's really important to just reinforce, and he just think this is really funny as well, that there will be jobs in the future, and often we'll think about what they're called entry-level jobs. But for me, a receptionist is the front face of your organisation. They're the person that brings, and I think about this, the people who work in our Museum of Discovery on the front door, if they know what the business is and they know how to talk about the business, then they are the most passionate advocates for who you are. So in my world, I think entry-level jobs will go through changes, but in my world, they are just as important as other jobs, because the person that you see first when you go through the door, when you meet somebody online, can make all the difference. And if that person is feeling comfortable about the changes and feel part of it in the way that you've all described, then you have a great opportunity to build Australia's economy, to provide better job opportunities for everyone, meaningful work, and to strengthen and diversify the economy. Now, Michelle gave her wonderful keynote and she talked about some of the things we can do to prepare. You've given us fantastic advice, all four of you, from different sectors. And this is what I want to reinforce. It's not one sector, it's all sectors. You've given us really concrete advice today about what it looks like for you, how you are reimagining, rebuilding, taking things and adapting them, changing your firms, not just in terms of technology, but work practice, and how you're really inviting all of us to be part of that. I want to thank you all. I'm going to hand over to the student facilitators who'll do a summary. I think they will have been hanging on every single word that you've had today, but thank you, all four of you, for an incredible contribution. I've learned a huge amount and I've been really inspired.
Thank you. Thanks, Marnie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marnie, and to our incredible panel. It was so great to have such a wide variety of insights and to hear about the application of GenAI in all of those different areas as well. I mean, finance, creative arts, law, accounting. And so interesting the difference of how each industry applies it. And also, I really picked up on the challenge of ensuring junior employees still get necessary development and the importance of the soft skills, that critical thinking, that problem solving, and how we can make sure that our students have that going into the workforce. Which, Guillaume, I know you've had an interesting experience with a recent mentor in self-development as well, haven't you?
Yes. Actually, entering the workforce in a space where knowledge is the main product that we provide to our clients. At that time, I was eager to use GenAI to be able to augment my thinking and content creation. But we found out very quickly with my mentor that in the space of growing and becoming an expert in a field, there's a trust relationship that needs to be established, right, between the mentor and the mentee. In any learning experience, you need to understand the limitation of knowledge before being able to provide insights to grow. And I think this is where, I had the feedback to say, I need to stop using GenAI because my mentor couldn't decipher between what was my thinking and what was the machine's thinking. And, along the way, once we establish, my ability to critical thinking and approach problem solving, then AI was able to actually augment this thinking and then go to the next steps of knowledge. So that was a very insightful experience for sure. I think to me as well, it reflects a little bit, a lot of what the panel was talking about, how to approach AI as, organization will become AI-driven organizations. And it's not only about individual being AI-based roles, but the whole organization is transforming. How the skills are being approached, how learning is being approached, how collaboration in a team function. I think there's a lot of things to unpack in there about the skills that lead to being able to do those things in organizations.
Exactly. It's a whole new world, but I'm excited to hear what our next segment is.
Yes. Our next segment showcases 6 case studies from across the ATN University Group. We'll hear about how ATN universities are preparing graduates for the next steps in their GenAI-engaged careers, from innovation curriculum to direct engagement with industry through work-integrated learning. The segment is chaired by Professor Sherman Young. Sherman is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of RMIT University, where he is responsible for the strategic leadership of RMIT's student learning and experience from enrollment to graduation. Sherman has been an academic for over 20 years, with research focused on the impact of new media technologies on policy, culture, and industries. This is going to be a very interesting segment. We'll start with a short video that will introduce the different case studies, which you might have already seen a little bit in the digital pamphlets given earlier this week. And then Sherman and the group will then join us. So please send us your questions for the case studies while we learn about those inspiring cases.
Hi, my name is Alex Jenkins. I'm the director of the WA Data Science Innovation Hub here at Curtin University. The Hub is a WA government initiative supported by Curtin University with the remit of increasing the uptake, education, training and awareness of data science and artificial intelligence in Western Australia. We work to help industry and government understand how they can use AI, and we also work closely with students across the university and beyond to ensure that we have a strong pipeline of talent into this new industry. The health hackathons are an initiative that we've been running a number of years, and each year they have grown in the number of participants that are taking part. And the way it works is essentially we collect a number of challenges from the healthcare sector. We invite students to form teams to address those challenges using generative AI, and then solutions are pitched to judges. The solutions are real software prototypes, often really polished, which is very impressive given the students only have a couple of weeks to work on the solution. Now, there's multiple purposes about why we run the Health Hackathon. Firstly, it allows us to expose students to real-world challenges in our health sector that can be solved using generative AI and advanced software techniques. It allows students to work with mentors from public hospitals, the WA health departments, and private industry to understand the challenges and what it is like to work in the healthcare sector, solving real problems. It also allows the agencies such as WA Health and HBF to find talent. It brings people together. It's a fantastic networking opportunity for everyone, and everyone really seems to enjoy it. Now, how did we make this happen? Well, we couldn't do it without our supporters and sponsors. Firstly, Curtin University obviously providing us with the space to work in and a number of the facilities that we use to run the workshops for this event. We also worked closely with HBF as the premier sponsor for this event this year. Now, working with a private health company really enabled a different perspective in terms of the challenges that they provided to students, the kind of things that they think about when it comes to health data, and a different view on how to approach these problems. So we also work very closely with the Government of Western Australia, the North Metropolitan Health Service and the Child and Adolescent Health Service and the Department of Health. We also had fantastic support from Arcana and the WA Life Sciences Innovation Hub. Arcana was really great with their software and infrastructure support, and the Life Sciences Innovation Hub is really there to help us build on the results of these hackathons and help these students build that career in the healthcare sector. Now, the impact of these challenges is really quite spectacular. So we had a couple of workshops held with the health industry leaders, and that allowed us to identify the types of challenges that we would put forward. We then had 40 mentors volunteering from the Department of Health, the North Metro Health Service, and also HBF. And this really allowed us to have the students work with people who are involved day to day with these challenges. How we better serve people suffering from mental health problems, how we can try to approach problems like ambulance ramping, which is an issue in Western Australia, how we can make our health system more efficient in many different ways. And so from that, we had 22 different teams of students and young people pitching. We had 7 shortlisted finalists and 5 overall winners. And overall, we had over 85 young people participating in the event and $7,000 in prize money that was given to students. But the main impact that we're looking to create here is what happens after the hackathon. The ability for these students to go on and get a career in the health sector. We even had one company, a team of students who came together for the hackathon. They enjoyed working with each other so much that they have started their own AI company and are doing fantastically well providing AI students for Western Australia, AI solutions for Western Australia. I'd just like to leave you with a short video of the event to give you some idea of what it was like. And we look to take these events national one day as well. Please get in touch if you've got any questions. Thank you.
I'm Danny Hamilton. I'm a Senior Lecturer of Learning Design at Deakin University, and I'm delighted to share with you a program I'm honoured to lead, the Future Focus GenAI program. The recent surge in scale and application of artificial intelligence systems exists in the context of our times, beautifully described as liquid modernity. Rapid technological transformation, so fluid, so fast, it slips through your fingers before anything solid can take form. The risk? Becoming trapped in a reactive stance. Education and industry also retain deep legacies of the industrial age and modernity. New tools, new speeds of life now demand new relationships. We need more than sustainability. We need a regenerative agenda to imagine brave, dynamic, possible futures. And we need to take an anticipatory stance. These are the ideas that built the Future Focus GenAI program and drive its speculative agenda. So the program began by asking a very simple question. What happens when you put passionate academics together with their professional peers to have a conversation about the impact of generative AI on their fields? The question sparked a partnership between Deakin Learning Futures and graduate employment. The Future Focus GenAI program was born, and it immediately enjoyed strong executive leadership support and a startup investment of $35,000. To construct a conversation about generative AI, we had to get back down to earth. The program has been built in two parts. Part one, build deeply relational, process-oriented industry partnerships that are not teaching or research-focused. Part two, from these conversations, generate AI-evolved, course-wide curriculum transformation recommendations. This is demanding, complex and specialised work. I lead this program with the wonderful support of Deakin's Director of Graduate Employability, Lauren Hansen, and together we navigate the challenges and opportunities this program presents to support 7 disciplinary partnerships. The partnerships are led by altruistic, creative, curious senior academics selectively recruited over 2 rounds. The first in August 2024 brought together partnerships from allied health, marketing and the GLAM sector. The second in February this year added disciplinary perspectives from local government, health, engineering and the legal professions. 9 high-calibre discipline leads have forged partnerships with 11 impressive professional partners. Their extended teams includes academic and professional staff, researchers and students. The 7 partnership teams total 40 individuals who are supported by a purpose-designed, open community of inquiry, accessible equally to all program participants. A community of inquiry now exists. Its infrastructure includes a bespoke brand identity, closed social media channel, program-themed e-zine, curated event series hosting multidisciplinary conversations, operating asynchronously. It is designed to accommodate fluctuations in workloads, support rapid dissemination, and enable updates to key stakeholders of emerging findings. This is a paddock to the plate methodology that prioritises sharing fresh insights that have already guided learning activities piloted within the embedded career education curriculum of select undergraduate arts and health courses. We have have emerging themes that have been shared with over 140 course leaders at the university's biennial Course Directors Day and presented to 18 graduate employers at the Deakin Talent Employer Advisory Board. So what do we know now? Well, we know that the capabilities of the program lead are critical. That's me, and it's critical. We also know that the community is a living laboratory, a vital incubator for industry-engaged, emergent academic practices. Securing academic workload for these conversations is essential, and investments of time and not money are critical. But so interesting, the slow and speculative multidisciplinary conversations we host can also rapidly transform curriculum. The Future Focus GenAI program is committed to preparing future-ready graduates for their flourishing in an AI-driven world. We're also committed to building educational futures for a people and a world to come. Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to continuing this conversation with you all very soon.
Hi everyone, my name is Hun, and welcome to my presentation on generating an AI chatbot for an internal client. In keeping with the theme of this symposium, the remainder of this presentation has been AI generated from various content produced around this project. I hope you enjoy it.
Business IT Project is a capstone course designed to align with RMIT's signature pedagogy through active, applied and authentic experiences. Emphasizing hands-on industry engagement, the course immerses students in real-world business challenges, equipping them with the skills needed to thrive in the digital age, where learning by doing is central. Traditionally, the course relied on foundational skills acquired in earlier studies to prepare students for their careers. However, with the rapid evolution of GenAI technologies, a transformative shift was necessary. The course now collaborates closely with ITS, the college's WIL team, and external partner Microsoft. Through direct engagement with industry experts, students gain practical insights into contemporary business challenges and enterprise solutions, while also working with cutting-edge tools like Microsoft's Copilot. While the idea of a chatbot had been explored multiple times in previous years, Challenges such as resourcing and technical requirements hindered its success. In early 2024, discussions between key figures in the college and the course coordinator led to a collaboration with MBIT students to develop the Will AI chatbot as a class project. Over 12 short weeks, the Will team acted as the client, providing the project brief, while Microsoft contributed technical expertise. Using a 360-degree camera, students engaged with industry experts virtually, gaining hands-on training in GenAI tools, knowledge that became the foundation of the chatbot. ITS also played a crucial role, ensuring students had the technical environment required to bring the project to life. This initiative quickly became a showcase of cross-disciplinary collaboration, bringing together multiple college and central teams alongside Microsoft. MBIT students took on dual roles as consultants and end users, reinforcing RMIT's commitment to AI and work-integrated learning. Additionally, the project aligns with the college's EdTech strategy by driving innovation, enhancing student learning outcomes, and fostering industry partnerships to develop impactful EdTech solutions with real-world applications. For the project to be successful, the capstone course had to adopt a collaborative model, what I like to call an ecosystem. It places students at the center of innovation, bridging academia, industry, and institutional support. In this model, MBIT students act as developers, applying their technical and business knowledge to solve a real-world problem. The Will team serves as the client, defining project requirements and ensuring alignment with industry needs, while Microsoft provides technical expertise, training, and access to cutting-edge GenAI tools. ITS offers infrastructure support, ensuring seamless integration within the university's systems. This collaboration fosters an active learning environment where students gain hands-on experience working with industry professionals, refining their problem-solving, communication, and project management skills. By centering students in this ecosystem, the project enhances their employability, industry readiness, and ability to navigate complex technological landscapes, positioning them as future leaders in business IT. Students identified collaboration as the key driver of the project's success. Devon Shah-Gar highlighted how collaborating with Microsoft not only enriched her technical skills, but also provided invaluable insights into real-world applications of GenAI in business contexts. In addition, Alfie Shaheen noted that integrating GenAI technology fostered problem-solving and teamwork skills essential for her career. She described the experience as an intense yet satisfying conclusion to her master's journey, where she stated, "This gig was the perfect finale to my master's journey, intense but oh so satisfying." Through this project, students effectively showcase their learning outcomes, gaining valuable experience to enhance their CVs. This has led to successful employment in roles such as data analysts at organizations such as RMIT University, Perceptive Data, and Amarinda Advisory. Students shared their achievements through various channels, including a YouTube video reflecting on their journey. They also presented their work at the university's Operations Town Hall and the Will Community of Practice, demonstrating the real-world impact of their collaboration with academics at ITS and Microsoft. With any project, there is always time for reflection and improvement. What surprised us the most was the willingness of students to tackle the unknown with confidence and enthusiasm. Their adaptability and problem-solving mindset allowed them to engage with complex challenges and emerging technologies without hesitation. Looking ahead, one key improvement would be locking in projects 3-4 months ahead of schedule to provide students with greater clarity and preparation time. This would enable smoother onboarding, better alignment with industry partners, and more structured project execution. Additionally, having the flexibility to select from a wide range of tools was invaluable, as it allowed students to experiment with different technologies and choose the most effective solutions for their projects. In the future, fostering even greater access to diverse tools and platforms will further enhance students' learning experiences and industry readiness.
Welcome. My name is Bert Verhoeven, and I'm the Director and Senior Lecturer of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Academy at the University of Newcastle. Together with my colleague Timothy Hoare, I developed a human-centric GenAI first framework, and I'm going to present this today. Mark Hoffman, when he saw our framework, our Deputy Vice Chancellor, said, "How to build AI know-how into education and graduates is currently a keeps me awake at night issue for me and many others." The framework, although written for entrepreneurship and business, it can be applied across many different areas of education. So why a human-centric GenAI first? Teaching. Well, I implemented mandatory use of GenAI for both students and myself starting February 2023. And from that experience, I came to the conclusion that educators must take ownership of AI's role in education And the framework can help them with that. Take ownership. What are the core principles? Well, you need to see AI as a co-creator where we add value to the co-creation process. It can help personalization at scale for student learning. It can be supportive of competency-based active learning. And the focus with AI will be on the learning process, how we learn with AI, how we do our critical thinking, creative thinking. You don't just hand in a paper that's done by AI. You need to show that have engaged with that and use your critical and creative thinking to come to a better result. And it can also support progress measurements of competencies. So recently we published our framework in a AACSB blog, and it has 4 elements, as you can see here: preparation, personalized learning, classroom engagement, and summative assessment. The preparation phase is where teachers develop courses with AI, exercises, curriculum, rubrics, etc., and then align that with competencies and learning goals. The personalized learning stage where students go out and work with AI whenever they want, doing exercises and reflections and getting feedback to that work. While they get feedback, their competency development is being measured and registered. In the classroom, the teacher is a mentor coach. There's much more time to talk to students about how they're going than before because much of the teaching aspect is taken by AI. The summative assessment is all around the learning process and the outcome combined. AI helps with providing feedback to the assessment, and teachers will never just give back AI feedback to the students. It needs to be owned by the teacher, and so it needs to align with their opinion of the result of the student's work. We are building a platform that can support this pedagogy. We call it New You. This New You platform, here's some screenshots here. Students go into the platform and then can do all kinds of exercises with feedback from AI, which is all registered in the secured cloud. They get feedback from AI. They can see an overview of how they're going with their competency development, for example, creative thinking. They get an overview of who they are and how the development is going over time, but also across the program, as you can see there on the right-hand side. They can also do their personal journal here. So at the end of their learning journey at our university, they have an overview of a portfolio of their reflections. Industry support from Kevin Bell, Head of Higher Education and Research at Amazon Web Services, who sees clear alignment of tech and pedagogic drivers in this. To sum up what this means for education leaders, you need to take ownership of AI in education. Do that by training educators in the new framework, embed the framework into curricula and pedagogy and support it by the New You platform, and encourage experimentation and research in AI-enhanced learning. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the presentation Guided by GenAI, Driven by Judgment. I am Quan Liang Tan, lecturer for the capstone project course in the University of South Australia's Master of Health Services Management program. Today, I will share how we are integrating GenAI to prepare health management professionals who can tackle real-world challenges while maintaining sound professional judgment. The capstone project course is the final course in the master's program. Students combine everything they have learned and use them to solve current problems. It was designed to push their abilities and recognize the growth they have achieved throughout their studies. Our students work with industry partners, such as hospitals, aged care providers, clinics, and health networks. A past project, for example, helped an aged care provider assess the feasibility of a transition care program. Students have just 13 weeks to bring these projects to life, and that is not much time. So every tool they can use matters. Enter GenAI. We introduce AI early with structured guidance. Students begin with hands-on workshops, then move to scaffolded activities. As confidence grows, they apply AI independently to address their specific project challenges. Students use GenAI throughout their projects for brainstorming, proposal development, data collection, and analysis. For us as educators, it extends our ability to guide students beyond our individual expertise. Yet, as AI enhances efficiency, it must not replace human expertise. Students learn very quickly to verify information using multiple sources and apply sound judgment in their decisions. Since 2022, our course success rate has remained consistently above 95%. To investigate whether GenAI integration contributed to this success, we conducted semi-structured interviews with 2 recent graduates. Their experiences, which I'll share next, provide valuable insights into how AI tools supported their learning journey and continued to benefit them after they graduate. Guillaume, a graduate and healthcare consultant, used GenAI for advanced data analysis during his studies. Without coding experience, he relied on AI to generate Python scripts and apply regression models. This approach helped him uncover insights from survey data that standard tools couldn't provide easily. Guillaume's biggest challenge wasn't just data analysis, it was guiding AI to produce meaningful insights. In his words, the biggest challenge was understanding how to direct the machine. I spent time learning prompt engineering to get more relevant and reliable responses. Now, Guillaume continues to use GenAI daily in his job. He applies it to streamline research, refine presentations, and support decision-making. His capstone experience gave him an edge, helping him integrate AI into consulting workflows focused on privacy, safety, and efficiency. Trisha, another of our graduates, used GenAI to refine research design. She started with draft survey and focus group questions, then used AI to structure and improve them. This ensured her project captured the right information. For Trisha, learning GenAI wasn't just about using it, it was about knowing when to challenge it. As she puts it, many GenAI responses tend to be quite generic, and you need to tailor them to your project needs. You can't solely depend on ChatGPT, nor should you. GenAI played a role in helping Trisha secure her position in a health network by helping her refine her job application and structure interview responses. Now in her role in the health network, she continues to apply AI for communication, refining reports, and organizing complex information. Guillaume and Trisha both embody our approach in practice. Guillaume leverages AI for health data insights, Trisha for strategic thinking. Both demonstrate how AI enhances rather than replaces judgment. Their growth reflects our core mission, developing professionals who use technology while keeping human needs central. Thank you.
Why would speech pathologists have additional urgency in terms of using generative AI? In this presentation, I'll highlight the clinical need for speech pathology students to have this integrated into their training. GenAI is now embedded into speech pathology student learning from the first day on campus, in classes across subjects and in the UTS Speech Pathology Clinic. So I'll step you through a small case example. With a few minutes, you should be able to gain an appreciation of how we're building it into our clinical training. Here, our lecturer, Dr. Kath Gregory, is providing telesupervision of 2 students using Zoom with a client who is at home. Kath will outline the why of this learning opportunity.
As speech pathologists, we now have to embrace and teach digital communication. Using GenAI like ChatGPT, our students help clients engage in social media, emails, and texting. Clients do need some basic writing or speech-to-text skills, and reading comprehension to edit their responses. But by using AI in aphasia therapy, our students have helped clients connect socially, sometimes for the first time in many years. It's been really lovely to see the improvement in quality life.
Here, the client outlines the benefit of his work in learning to use ChatGPT to engage socially.
3 years ago, I couldn't do anything. Now, I reply to emails, text messages, and Facebook, and make Facebook posts.
And here are the two students explaining the benefits and some limitations.
So it's very exciting because this therapy has not been done before. There's not much research papers on it. So just teaching him to have better conversations with friends and family using ChatGPT has been super
helpful. I think it's given him and us a lot of opportunity, and we've looked into like lots of new things that we can work on with him. So, and which he's excited about, and I guess we're excited about too.
As well. Yeah.
Cool. Are you finding it hard to work with ChatGPT at all?
I think just telling the client to put additional prompts on ChatGPT so that he gets the correct answer, which is personalized to him, has been a little tricky. But I'm sure the more we do that therapy, we'll learn more about it.
Another client group that we teach students to work with are people with complex communication needs or who use speech devices to communicate. And here, Fiona Gibbon, one of our guest lecturers, is explaining the importance of determining authorship in messages produced using generative AI on a speech device.
GenAI has enormous potential to speed up the use of communication devices. However, it is important that measures are put in place to preserve the authorship of messages generated with the assistance of GenAI.
So there's lots for students to learn from day one up to the end of their 2-year masters. And part of this involves having guest lecturers who are clinicians using GenAI in their practices already. We made a podcast, and feature one of the episodes has a number of clinicians explaining how they use it for professional purposes and for clinical purposes with their clients. So you can listen to that podcast and hear some more ideas about how we're developing our students to be able to use GenAI in these clinical settings.
What a fantastic range of examples and case studies. Welcome everybody on the panel. I won't go and ask everyone to introduce themselves because you've already done it on your videos. And we don't have an awful lot of time. I think, as academics, we probably need 10 minutes to say our name. So, the 10 minutes we have for Q&A may not be very long. What I thought I'd do, as we see if there are questions coming from our audience, is I'd just ask you about your own personal GenAI stories and learnings. It's hard to think that ChatGPT 3.5, which was probably the Netscape moment for GenAI, was only 2.5 years ago. So we've all come a long way very, very quickly. So I might start with Danny because you're in the top left, and I'm culturally inculcated to starting in the top left, so that's where we'll start. So Danny, maybe tell us how you first came to be engaged with GenAI and embarking on this journey towards the work that you're doing and continue to do.
Thank you, Sherman. I'm a creative visual artist, and I've been playing in the AI space for about 7 years. And I suppose I've very much lived in adversarial networks and image generation tools. So I suppose my place within that is thinking through the ethics. So that's pretty much my background right up to now.
Fantastic. And Hun?
Yep. So my background is actually as a high school teacher. And so I've worked with IT most of my life. And then moving across the university sector, my first instance with AI was sitting at a pub, really, and chatting to other academics about ChatGPT coming through and what it meant for us. And so really I saw that as a benefit rather than a hindrance for us, and seeing how important it would be moving forward and letting our students understand how we can use these technologies side by side with us to co-create a better future. So that's my impact.
I won't suggest that all the best ideas come from drinking in a pub, but, I'll let people imagine that being true or not. Alex, how about your journey? You've clearly been in this space for a long time, probably predating by a fair while the Gen AI moment, but tell us a little bit about your journey.
So predating Gen AI quite a while. I started getting into AI about 22 years ago. I actually studied cognitive science at the University of Western Australia, but eventually they shut that degree down because there simply wasn't enough interest. And cognitive science was this great mix of understanding cognition and how we might replicate that within machines and computers. But my interest into AI continued, and I worked in software development for a long time with machine learning and data science. And I still remember I started becoming the director of the hub about 4.5 years ago, and I remember the day that ChatGPT was released and thinking, oh my goodness, our hub is going to change significantly, because now AI is not something that was a very niche field, but it's going to enter the zeitgeist and the mainstream in a very big way, and it has changed what we do here at the hub and the interest that we get from people around Western Australia.
Yeah, I might pick up on that a little bit later, because I think it's that mainstreaming, or that, if you like, consumerization of Gen AI, which has been the really interesting shift in the last couple of years. But before we get to that, Bronwyn, when did you first encounter AI, and how has it led you to where you are today?
I guess the first encounter was really with AI as an assistive technology. So AI has been used in speech generating devices for quite a long time, and tracking what people say and use of voice, synthesized voice and things like that. But the OpenAI and the ChatGPT in particular caught my attention as an accessibility feature, that it might help people who do need assistance with writing, with creative arts, all sorts of things, to be more inclusive of people with disability. So that's really been my main focus.
Fantastic. And Kwan, what's your journey been?
Yes, it was back in 2021, I think. It was my first encounter with GenAI. I was wandering through the National Gallery of Victoria and found myself looking up the names of artists and asking this GenAI tool. So earlier, I think it was ChatGPT, about their work and their influences. And my technical literacy in this area is moderate at best, but I've experimented with these tools out of personal interest. But that actually helped me understand what students are experiencing. And that mattered because it wasn't the deep technical knowledge, but the curiosity and the critical thinking, and how do we squeeze the most out of these tools to get the outcomes that we want to achieve.
Fantastic. And Bert?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. AI and I go back a long time, to the 90s.
Oh, you're not that old, sure.
I show my age here. But when I started working with generative AI in early 2023, I'm teaching entrepreneurship and innovation, and I said, well, this is going to change everything. And so I made it mandatory for my students to use AI, which was very unusual then. And to use it for research, for prototyping, for presentations, for everything. And initially we had no idea how to do that, obviously, and started learning from experience and learning from working with hundreds of students. And that's where my first experience with AI, generative AI, really built from.
And it's just fascinating because there's clearly different backgrounds. You've all come to Gen AI from different places and from different contexts. So it's fantastic to see that range of backgrounds and the range of projects that you've been working on. I'm going to stay with Bert because there's a question from the audience for you, Bert. So in your work, what's more important? Is it the pedagogy? Is it the curriculum, the course and program structure, or is it technology? How do you think about those different components?
Yeah, no. Number one is human-centric. So it's always pedagogy and curriculum for me. And the technology is an enabler to change the way we learn. And that's what I've been working on. And that's what I've experienced in the past 2 years. So we call it the human-centric GenAI first pedagogy, because it needs to start with the human and how AI adds value to us and how we add value to the AI as well. So it's a two-way road, I think, there. And so the technology is, and in our lifetime, we've seen many new technologies, and we always needed a bit of time to get used to that. And in entrepreneurship, we know that there's a technology adoption curve and things like that. And AI may not entirely follow that because it goes so fast. But at the same time, we know that technology at the end of the day is an enabler, and it needs to help us do things faster, or come up with really interesting new business models, or come up with very innovative ways of dealing with things that we weren't able to deal with in the past. So, and in this case, I believe in my case, this is all about education and how it's going to change the pedagogy, as I just explained in my video, and curriculum, what we teach as well, and how we teach.
So human first, technology just supporting and enabling.
Always. And that's why AI is not necessarily, generative AI is not necessarily a technology-driven change, right? It's really has much more impact on how we work, how we live, how we learn, and etc., which are all human elements. And we need to, and I liked it in the previous panel when somebody said, we know about process and we need to re-engineer our processes. And I think we need to re-engineer also our education system and our education processes, and that is super interesting from an educator perspective.
I think you're absolutely correct, and what we're seeing on this panel today is great examples of the beginnings of that process, and it will be a journey. But I'm just so delighted that it's a journey that many are already undertaking.
Yeah.
Danny, I'm going to ask you a really difficult question, because it's a little bit like asking you who your favourite child is if you'd have children. What was your favourite project or favourite example that came out of all that work you were doing collaboratively at Deakin?
I think I can't. I will refuse to answer that, because I love all my children the same.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Always do.
Okay, were there elements of it? Like what were the standout elements of the work that you can draw together as, this made it all worthwhile to bring all these people together?
Yeah.
These are the things worth pursuing.
I'm being cheeky, because I think the really simple answer is I just adore the spirit of adventure of these people. We are at very different stages of maturity around AI, and that's both the academics and their industry partners. And this spirit of adventure and the ability to speculate and imagine and have the space and time to think has been a gift. And I think in these fast, rapid times of change, there is something about slow academia here to really take stock and ground ourselves in what is really happening. And I suppose I'm just looking at my colleagues here in the room as well. I think we all feel like there's something really grounding about the processes we're involved in each of our projects. But yes, Sherman, to answer your question, I love my children the same, but what I love the most about all of them is their spirit of adventure.
Oh, lovely. Can I take one when someone asks me the same question? I'll take that answer. Kwan, fantastic example there. I'm just curious, asking for a friend, were there any institutional challenges when you started to introduce those GenAI tools? And I'm thinking of Guillaume's example of using ChatGPT to analyse data, et cetera, which may or may not have been sensitive, I don't know, as part of the project. But, to what extent did UniSA embrace or express concerns or put some parameters around that usage? I'm just intrigued, and Marnie will probably have something to say to me after that question.
In fact, thanks, Sherman. That's a very, very good question. And I think from day one, our leadership team, Marnie can attest to that, has been really really encouraging in the use of GenAI. It's just from the perspective of an academic on the ground, I will have to set some ground rules. And in fact, now we already have the policies in the university, but 3 years ago when we started, there's hardly any because it's so new and it's so groundbreaking then. So I had to look up what other people are doing in other countries as well to bring back those policies. But now I'm defaulting back to the university policies.
Fantastic.
So important thing is attribution and also not taking on face value what GenAI produces.
Yeah, and similar question for you, Bronwyn, and I'm almost preempting the next panel around the accrediting bodies, but I'm just curious as to how the conversations with accrediting bodies went in with your particular project, if indeed you got to that stage.
I think there's no issue in terms of the accreditation. It's another technology. So speech pathologists do have to be proficient in communication technologies, and it's another one like that. So it would just fit in and streamline into all the current competencies around professionalism, critical thinking, involving user-centered co-design, making sure technologies are not biased, using appropriate technologies, teaching clients and families, increasing access, making sure there's not this digital divide, doing what they can to advocate and for a public health level of service. So there's lots of avenues where you would say, oh, how could GenAI enhance our teaching and how could it enhance the competencies of the students? But I think there is more work to be done on the assessment. How do we assess their capability of it? And as Bert mentioned, mandating the use of it. We haven't done that yet, but it's something that we do need to move towards so that people don't avoid something that they might not be comfortable with, but which they should be competent in using.
I've got a heap of questions. There are some coming through the Q&A, but I'm also getting the wrap-up signal from the team. So I'm going to ask one last thing, and you have less than 5 seconds each to answer. That's terrible, isn't it? We've got a lot of academics in the room who may be interested in this session. What's one very quick piece of advice you'd each give to them as to how to get going thinking about this work? I'm going to start with Alex. I think you're on mute, Alex.
The use cases for AI in health are extraordinary. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. It's a fantastic time to combine those two areas at the moment, both in the clinical and the research space.
Fantastic. Good.
Be brave and explore.
Awesome. Danny.
Be brave and explore, because I totally agree with that. I endorse that remark.
Bert.
Keep ChatGPT open 24 hours on your browser.
What if you prefer Claude? I'll leave that one.
Yeah, or Claude, or any other. I keep all of them open.
So it's be transparent about our learning journey. So position myself or educators as a co-explorer with students. So the vulnerability will strengthen the engagement as we discover the capabilities together.
Fantastic. And Bronwyn.
I would say model for the students, use it yourselves, play with it, and collaborate with industry partners on their ways of using it so that the students can see the target there as well.
Well, thank you all for those fantastic examples. Apologies we didn't have more time to dig a little bit deeper and explore more. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity at a later date. For now, be brave and go boldly. And back to Elena and Guillaume.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. I think that was a great session. A lot of insights from there. I think to me, it brings in mind, right, that we're for so long in a space of narrow artificial intelligence, and now with GenAI, it's general artificial intelligence. That means that we can start to apply to everything we think and we do as professionals and individuals. That also sparks, right, I think a lot of concern from and question from our panelists about not just assessing skill gaining about a specific profession, but learning more about learning and learning more about being curious and thinking as like the main skills we're looking for. So very interesting. I know there's been a lot of movement as well in the law profession, right, in the media, based on some, use that was not appropriate. So I think that's, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I can. So you're right, there has been a couple of, I guess, mishaps in the legal sector in terms of making false submissions to the court that have been generated by ChatGPT and other such models, which of course in law is a big no-no. We can't make submissions to the court based on cases that don't exist. But what's interesting is that this has happened even though we've already been aware of the regulations. So it's happened in Australia, in England, in the US, multiple times. But that does lead us really nicely into our next segment, which is around professional bodies and regulation. So now that we've heard from the employers and the academics, we'll be hearing from the other part of the skilling ecosystem, the accrediting and professional bodies. We're super keen to learn how they are navigating the impact of GenAI on the workplace, what the future is looking like, and what GenAI's impact on accreditation and professional standards across accounting, law, health, and human resources is. This next segment is chaired by Professor Kylie Reedman. Kylie is the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Education and Students at the University of Technology, Sydney. Her professional focus has always been on enhancing students' learning, having started her career as a high school teacher. Kylie is a Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy and a 2020 recipient of an Equity Practitioners in Higher Education Australasia Champion for Change citation. Over to you, Kylie.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with my fantastic panel. I'm delighted to be chairing the last panel for the day, and how interesting that we've heard from employers, we've heard from academics, we've been hosted by students, and now we're going to talk to a group of people who are leading professional authorities, accrediting bodies, to get their perspective on this really important topic. I'd like to start by introducing our 4 panel members. Adam Orty, the Chief Executive of the Law Institute of Victoria. Adam was appointed into the role in 2018. He's an experienced membership association and not-for-profit executive who has had extensive leadership, finance and company secretariat experience. Welcome, Adam. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And there's been a few references to different aspects of the law profession today, which I'm sure you'll be picking up on. Next, I'd like to introduce Rachel Griffiths, the Manager of Strategic Policy for APRA, the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Authority. Rachel is the Manager of Strategic Policy, as I said. Her team at APRA are responsible for developing and consulting on registration standards, codes and guidelines that are relevant across the 16 professional professions that come under the National Registration and Accreditation Scheme. So I'm sure lots of our health academics who are listening in today will have interacted with Rachel and her team at APRA. Thank you for joining us today, Rachel. Next, Kelly Kajewski, who is the General Manager of Strategic Learning Initiatives for the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand. As the General Manager, Kelly's responsible for developing and implementing a comprehensive strategic learning initiatives plan. She develops and implements these initiatives aligned with evolving industry and stakeholder needs, with a strong focus on building workforce capability and positioning. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you, Kelly, in terms of what you will be bringing to this panel. Last but certainly not least, Jonathan Wolfrey, who's the Non-Executive Director and State President of the Australian HR Institute, and also a managing partner of a HR/IR consulting firm, Talenting. So Jonathan is one of Australia's leading voices in human resources, known nationally for his expertise in strategic HR, organisational effectiveness and industrial relations. He serves as a board director, state president WA and national chair of the IR advisory panel for the Australian HR Institute, and as deputy chair of the Workforce Committee for Catholic Education Commission of Western Australia. So how lucky am I to have such an amazing panel to work through this last session of the afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to frame the first question and kind of try and work through it with each of you, if that's okay, because we're really interested in the audience and constantly talking about this at universities, about how professions are changing with the adoption of Gen AI, what this means for you as leaders in professional bodies in terms of guidelines for ethical and responsible use, and meeting employer expectations. So I guess we're really thinking about how Gen AI is being adopted across all of your professions. We've seen from the showcase how the universities are collaborating with different industries to really make sure that academics and students are engaged. We've heard a very future-focused kind of approach here. And so I'm really interested to hear from each of you about how you position this in your industry. So Adam, we might start with you if that's okay. The Chief Justice of Victoria and New South Wales have issued guidelines on how Gen AI can be used within the profession. How's that been received, and what's been the impact on those on how those in the law profession do that work?
Thanks, Kylie. I think the one of the challenges that we have in the legal profession is that the profession are officers of the court, and how Gen AI and information sought through Gen AI is actually used, particularly in providing information into the court, is one of the critical issues that the courts themselves are trying to grapple with. So, as you quite rightly said, the Chief Justice of New South Wales and Victoria have issued some pronouncements, and I'd probably say those pronouncements are somewhat cautious in the utilisation of AI. Having said that, I don't think that's stopping the profession from engaging with it. So we actually had a conference ourselves earlier this week, for industry forum, and we actually asked participants to put out their hand, and we had about 500 people in the room. And I think about 30% of those in the room are actively using Gen AI in their day-to-day workplace. Having said that, there's probably another 20% of the dabbling, and then probably another half of the audience that was saying that they are not yet embracing it. So it is a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the legal profession. As the peak body for solicitors in Victoria, we are encouraging the profession to use it. We think it's got great benefit. But there is also a level of caution. And I think, as the preamble to this panel said, there's already been examples in courts of people using Gen AI and potentially misleading the court in terms of the information it's providing. So with all of this from the legal profession, it's about using it safely, looking for ways of how it can actually improve the way you operate. But you've got to be very careful as a member of the profession. You can't abrogate your responsibility for the advice you provide to clients or to the court as to the veracity, the validity of the information you're providing through Gen AI.
Great, thank you so much. And I think that judicious use and careful ethical use, effective use, the kind of language that we've heard from our academic colleagues in the previous session really coming through and reflected in what you've just said there. So thank you. Rachel, health services, as we heard previously, have been using technology in different ways for quite some time. From your perspective, how has Gen AI been adopted, and what have the impacts been for practitioners but also for clients?
Thanks, Kylie. Yeah, it's been really exciting to see some of the case studies beforehand, and we've been hearing as we've started in the AI work about so many amazing ways that AI is transforming healthcare. And I think that's right. It's been around for a while, but a lot of the technology that's been used previously has been in that diagnostic space, and it's been quite tightly regulated by the TGA, so the Therapeutic Goods Administration, as a medical device, whereas with generative AI, that's not regulated in the same way. So we have seen massive uptake of generative AI in terms of AI scribes and also co-pilots. We're hearing more about as well. And I think one of the professional bodies for medicine reported recently that either half GPs, they're either using it or they're planning to integrate it into their practice at the moment. So that's kind of really come a lot of those tools on the market within the last 18 months. So there's a lot of change, and there's obviously like a lot of stress on the health workforce at the moment, lots of workforce shortages, and similar to I think we've heard for the legal profession, there's lots of these administrative type, tasks that there's obviously a lot of benefits for doctors and other health professionals in using AI to manage some of that, and then that's enabling them to provide better care, better communicate with patients, and benefits for patients to enable, rather than their practitioner staring at the computer screen and looking up, lots of things, they're able to engage more with them and spend more time in the consultation on that. So our job is partly about providing the guidance for health practitioners, and I think similar to what's happened in the legal space, we've really looked to principle-based guidance, things reinforcing existing obligations for professionals and how they apply. So things like accountability, transparency, like informed consent's a really important kind of area we're thinking about. But also we're working really closely with others in the health system. So health's kind of one of the high-risk areas identified for AI in the economy. So a lot of work going on with other regulators and government agencies about it as well. So big time of change, and we're really trying to support the professions through that with some practical guidance.
Great. Thanks so much, Rachel. I've got a question for you later about how that interaction's happening in terms of developing those principles, but I'll come back to it because I do want to ask Kelly about her area of chartered accountancy. Accountants are in a position to use GenAI to automate data entry, to generate financial reports, identify anomalies, etc. But as you and your profession have noted, the professional standards still have to be maintained regarding auditing procedures. There's a whole lot of legal obligations there. What's been the impact on what professional standards look like, or what do you perceive it will become as we look at GenAI integrating more into the workplace and into the work of chartered accountants? Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. And that's a big question, isn't it? So I think the way that we're looking at this is we're looking at our members and our future members are needing to be prepared for that kind of future of work where AI is integrated into everyday work and it's integrated into a lot of their roles. So the critical thing that we're looking at is really remaining true to the core capabilities of being a chartered accountant. So those core capabilities are some of those that we've heard mentioned on other panels before in today: problem solving, critical thinking, but also that ethical oversight, professional skepticism, those capabilities that are core to being a chartered accountant, and they still obviously apply regardless of whether AI is in the workplace or not. And we actually think it's even broader than that. We know that artificial intelligence is really transforming the accounting and finance landscape, and it's really is expanding the roles of chartered accountants. So we're starting to look at some of those other areas that they're playing in as well. Now that we have AI that can start to automate some of those more routine transactional tasks, and it frees up some time for our members to really think about those sort of more strategic and advice-related problem-solving sort of parts of their role. It is really important for us to be supporting them both in terms of advice and in terms of ongoing capability development, for them to be able to stay ahead of this, but also to become those leaders that really guide organisations in leveraging that technology in a responsible, effective and ethical way. And we do really see that as the really core capability in AI fluency, or AI fluency capability as we call it. And we think that that is really core to our profession. And we do a lot of work both with our members and with employers of our members to also understand sort of what their expectations and priorities are around this area as well. And we've just done quite a big, actually, consultation project with our members and employers, really looking at the future of work and capability development and their priorities for those capability development. And, look, that confirmed what we already knew. AI is not just a hot topic, it is disrupting workplaces, and the pace that employers are requiring their employees to upskill is accelerating. What's kind of interesting, though, is everyone was looking for guidance. So employers themselves were looking for guidance on how to do the upskilling and how to validate the upskilling. So it's not just enough for someone to say, I know how to use these tools. How do you validate that they know how to use them and bring in all those human and professional skills as well? Our members, we are quite lucky that chartered accountants tend to be quite tech savvy, and they have been quite early adopters with some of this technology. So our most recent member survey showed that 70% of our members are already using AI in some form at their work, and 70% also believe that it's going to revolutionise their work in the next 5 years. And as I said, with that sort of early adoption nature, we've got some people there that are ready for us to help with the guidance, but they are still looking to us for help with, where do they go in these future-focused areas.
Oh, it's really interesting. It also, as the kind of skill level increases and the complexity increases, it also makes me wonder about what level our graduates have to be prepared at, almost above what the level they might have previously been at. And I note that there's a question in here about from a previous panel about a mentor saying, please don't use it so I can assess your skill level without it. But there's two parts of that, isn't there? There's how to actually use it in practice in a way that makes sense is a really critical part, as well as understanding what the fundamentals that underlie it are. So really interesting. I'll have to come back to that. The next question's about graduates and what you expect of them. So I'll come back to it then. Jonathan, question for you. The use of GenAI in HR practices has the benefit of increasing productivity, but potentially at the risk of dehumanising the workforce and homogenising the process. We heard before about, GenAI generated letters and CVs and things like that. And of course, we want to make sure that the human element is very much still a part of the experience of managing human resources. We know that with QUT, ARI recently published a report that looks at how these transformations are shaping the experiences of HR professionals in Australia, including their concerns and perspectives on GenAI in the workplace. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been very interesting to go last and listen to how different professional associations are addressing that. And there's a lot of commonality, and there's definitely some challenges as well with the HR profession. So ARI, the Australian HR Institute, as I'll call them, look, it kind of and others have mentioned this, it's really accelerating transformation that's been on the cusp for, let's say, a decade now, where HR has tried to really centre on the person-centred organisational engagement and things like that. But we've been a bit bogged down with transactional type human resource work. And we didn't have the benefit of generative AI to assist with that. But people in the audience would have heard and understood that for even before generative AI became what it is today and led to a conference such as this, applicant tracking systems, workforce planning, a whole range of HR administrative functions have had technology trying to assist and get rid of the process and the manual work so that we can focus as a profession on that human-centered of that engagement component. Obviously, generative AI has brought that significantly forward, but what it has done is unearth some of the challenges that we started to see before Gen AI hit our shores, but really, exacerbate what some of those are, and we've alluded to some of those. We know that with recruitment systems, that what underpins a recruitment system and how there might be unconscious biases within the way that technology reads and assesses, generally how it's programmed, is a real challenge for organisations, and we've seen some negative consequences and outcomes of a lack of diversity and things when technology is left to run unfettered in high stakes decision making. Workforce planning similar. We talked in there about letters of offers and things like that, which, sometimes lose that human element or that connection and sound very cookie cutter, etc. So the HR profession itself, and you talked about the research that ARI recently undertook with QUT, just to understand, how HR professionals are using Gen AI and their capability to use it into the future, because I think, as I've stated here, there's a key role for well-grounded HR people in there, just to look at those unintended consequences and the impact on people in the workplace. So, look, it's a challenge in some respects. Our research did say that 75% of HR professionals have limited or no understanding or experience with AI. But these are the people in organisations being called to say, look, we're going to roll it out. How do we deal with that from a change management perspective? How do we deal with it to prevent high stakes decision making being made for the wrong reasons, etc.? So love the productivity of it, but our profession and led by the Professional Institute, RE, really trying to adapt and adjust to make sure HR professionals have those core skills that let them play the ethical governance kind of centerpiece in what should be a positive for organisations.
Great, that's fantastic. It's great to have heard from you all in the opening kind of gambit of this session as well, so thank you. I am going to turn my attention now to the recruitment of graduates, as well as experience and more experienced talent, to use a word maybe used in the HR profession. I don't know, Jonathan. But we know that trends are emerging in terms of the expectations related to GenAI knowledge and proficiency. We heard earlier from our keynote speaker, Michelle, about the emerging skills of EQ, creativity, moral reasoning, complex decision-making, playing not that they're new skills, but playing a different role in the context of using generative AI, as well as the other skill sets around data analysis, task automation, speed, language understanding generation, and so on. In your profession, and I'll open it up here, in your professions, what are the key capabilities that you're hearing from employers that they are seeking from their workforces, and particularly from graduates? I don't know who wants to go first. Someone jump in.
I'm happy to go
Go
first.
for it, Kelly.
I'm happy to go.
Look, I can confirm that the employers that we work with are looking for graduates who know how to use particularly Gen AI tools from day one. They are looking for that expertise, but they are also looking for those human capabilities that we've spoken about, many times today. And I'm so happy to hear everybody talking about these, because we know that the Gen AI is a tool. We also need to be making sure that our graduates and others have those human capabilities. So and those critical thinking, problem solving, those sorts of things that actually help them to understand what to put into a tool and how to understand what's coming out and interpret what's coming out. But there's also those other skills that we're looking for, which is around adaptability, so being able to adapt not just to new tools and new information, but also to adaptability within their own careers as well, because we know that this is something that's there's a lot of change coming. We need to be adaptable, and that's going to be a real differentiator in terms of career development, is the people that can adapt and move along with this change. I guess the other thing, there was a couple of interesting things that I thought that's come out of our research as well. We actually did note that there was a bit of an emphasis on employers sometimes looking towards grads themselves for the guidance around generative AI. There can sometimes be this perception that they are digital natives, so they'll know how to use this tech. Whether that perception is correct or not, it is a really interesting perception, and that's where we sometimes get some some conflict at work, where there's that mismatched expectation. But there does seem to be that expectation. And I guess just to really reinforce how much we're finding our employers are really expecting people to arrive with these skills, one of the employers we spoke to said that if a grad presented work to them that they hadn't first checked with AI, they would consider it almost negligent. So don't show me anything until it's been checked. So that obviously that's one example, but this is the breadth of examples that we're seeing. So I guess the things that we're seeing in terms of development, obviously, there is a need to upskill in AI or AI fluency. There's a need to upskill in these tech areas. But there's also that need to have those kind of transferable human skills. We call them lots of different things, but they are those things that are going to guide the inputs and be able to interpret the outputs. And just before I hand over to whoever else would like to contribute to this, the thing that I think that comes out of that, at least for us, and I'm sure for everybody else on this call, it actually has led us to ask, the two critical questions, which are, what do accounting and finance professionals need to be considered AI fluent, and how can we help them develop those capabilities? And that has resulted in a range of activities for us across our whole AI education strategy. But the thing that's probably most relevant for this particular part of the conversation is how we are dealing with the content in our CA program, which is our professional program to become a chartered accountant. And we are absolutely embracing generative AI in that program. We we are focusing on work readiness. And so we've made that really conscious decision to embrace generative AI. We know that workplaces are asking for candidates who know how to, not just know how to use the technology, but know how to use it with all of those professional skills around it. So we are absolutely focusing on preparing them, not just for the use, but also for the governance, for the ethical oversight, and all of those other core and critical skills to be a chartered accountant.
Brilliant. Adam, you were going to say something earlier.
I think from the legal profession, it's probably not as rapid a race as it is in the accounting profession, and I think one of the key things for that is around making sure that those coming out of university into the workforce understand the fundamental sort of ethical overlay and judgment issues that sit within the legal profession, and particularly when it comes to client confidentiality and the like, and being an officer of the court. So one of the things that employers are telling us is they want to see, obviously, students coming into the workforce understanding the technology, but more important than the technology is it's the judgment that's got to come with the use of the technology. It's the critical thinking and the analysis around the use of AI, and particularly one of the things that the employers are concerned about is how they're going to manage the confidential information of clients, client professional privilege. Those sort of issues are actually really fundamental to the trust in the profession, and so while there is a level of engagement and people are talking about it, and we as a professional association are needing to build the skills and so I suppose the engagement with their technology, it's probably a bit more cautious. There are some parts of the profession and some employers, particularly in the larger firms, that are probably more actively looking at how they use AI, but it's more from how do they reduce some of the transactional work within the firm and focus on the analysis. But there is really I suppose, still a bit of work to be done around how does it work in the context of advice. And one of the things, we do accreditation around those who seek to become specialists in their field of practice. We are actually encouraging people to start to look at it, to test to see what the advice would look like based on their own judgment and their own analysis first, and then how would it look if it came through a generative AI process, to try to make sure that they're actually still maintaining that critical thinking and analysis to their own advice. So again, it's a bit of a mixed bag, I think, more so in the legal profession, and there is still a level of optimism in how you could use it and how it can improve the profession, but there is a level of caution, particularly as it relates to client confidentiality and protecting client privilege.
Yep, thank you, Adam. I think from each of you, I've already heard that really strong sense about the core capabilities of the profession, the responsibilities of the profession, the guidance and principles, existing obligations, I think you said, Rachel, before, that don't change as a result of using new forms of technology. Jonathan or Rachel, any other comments on that one from you, from your profession's perspective?
I do have something briefly to add, and I won't go over, how to use, integrate, build those capabilities. What I think it's important, I'd be interested if others feel the same in their different profession, is actually having a little bit of fundamental understanding of how it works and why it works, what it does. So I think we talk a lot about how to use it and whether people can use it and how that connects into their people skills, which I absolutely agree with. I think particularly in our profession, we need to have an understanding of how it works. You don't have to be a programmer or anything to that level, so that you can understand what are some of the risks and potential outcomes for using it. Because, say, for example, large language models and things like that, just understanding how they're trained and generated, it gives, for example, an HR professional the background. They're going, this comes from basically collective knowledge of the internet. And we know inherent biases or differences in regards to how that comes to the fruition. So I do agree absolutely with how to use it, but a little bit of surface level of how it's designed and how it was iterated, I think is important as well, so we can anticipate the unintended consequences.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate that important part about how to both teach people but encourage people to learn about as well as through and with. So not just getting straight into the heart of it, because that would help, I think, with that what you've all said already and what we've heard from other panels about the critical framing, the critical thinking and the reflection to not just take something as at face value, but actually apply your own professional knowledge and skills. So it doesn't ever replace any of that, but it certainly has the potential to augment it. Thank you. We heard a little bit about the kind of the role that students might play in the transformation of the professions. And a little part of the back of my mind is thinking in my role and in the role of university leaders, how do we support our academics to then support students to do that? So we have to be on the front foot when we're learning really alongside you. So I just wanted to call out that kind of three parts of the triangle. What role do you see students playing in the transformation of the profession? And then I want to ask you a second part, which is about how you work with people who are delivering these programs to also support the same outcome, ethical transformation of the profession. Rachel, we might start with you if that's okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Kylie. And just in relation to the last point as well, I was just kind of thinking, following on from Jonathan's points, that understanding as well about how using the technology impacts your own behaviour, because we've been talking a lot about automation bias, particularly with the digital scribes in healthcare, and it's been really interesting talking to some of the developers as well about all those kind of parts of the training that follow after actually using it, what to do when you've been using it for a year or 2 years and things like that. But so in terms of students, I think it's going to be really exciting, and just thinking about some of the case studies we heard today, to have students and graduates then coming out who have had a chance to have that kind of sandbox to play with different AI and to test it in a really safe environment in a way that people who, are working clinically, have not had that as part of their training. So I think they will be a lot braver in using things and being able to kind of have those real-time case studies. We do have, so as part of our regulatory framework, all the professions have accreditation standards that's then kind of translated into, the core structures and things. So that's something that's being looked at the moment. How does AI kind of get translated into that setting? And I think there's very much the expectation that, as well as health professionals coming out with the core skills for their profession, that they also need to understand kind of the fundamentals about how to safely use AI. So I think some of the boards will start consultations about changes to accreditation standards this year. And I think just in terms of adopting new technologies generally, there's probably some of the core principles are already in accreditation standards. I think just like the tech revolution, that's happened previously, I think new graduates are just going to play such a huge part in helping kind of support implementation in the profession generally. My kind of first job was working as a medical receptionist for my dad when he was going onto the computer, so scanning whole lots of files and all of that. So having kind of lived through that transformation and seeing, how much younger doctors kind of coming up supported the uptake and the confidence building with others in the profession, I think, that's a really important role that they'll play as well. But I think, just to reiterate, we've heard so many times today, just those core competencies, I think, and that really strong kind of ethical, critical thinking framework and knowing the right questions to ask, I think, is just the most essential thing for graduates.
Thanks, Rachel. Open it up for anybody else to make a comment on that one, the intersection between students and accrediting bodies and academics, and particularly academic programs. I think, Rachel, you talked about that intersection and where programs are accredited by people like yourselves, and we have to, as academics, make sure that we meet those accreditation standards, how that conversation is evolving too. It's really interesting to hear. So did anyone else want to make a comment on that one? Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, for sure. From an HR profession, first of all, HR, unlike some of my colleagues here today, is not a statutory regulated profession as well. There, you can wake up one day and call yourself an HR manager, and you won't be have anyone knock on your door and say you're not allowed to do that. So, but we do work in an increasingly professional industry, and organisations expect the HR practitioners to come with a certain level of baseline skills, and for that reason, we have a number of thousands of our members across Australia certified as HR practitioners, even though they're not legally required to, but what they demonstrate through that. At the heart of that is an HR capability framework, which we revise on a regular basis and consult with universities and use research to really inform us what are those core skills that an HR professional needs and what are organisations telling us they need from their HR leaders. We accredit, and I dare say it's the vast majority of HR programs across Australia with universities, and really appreciate working with universities who want to demonstrate that connection with industry, and as the professional body for HR professionals are a great point of contact in every state. So the way that we're doing it, look, mid last year we added generative AI, but other digital transformation capabilities to our capability framework, and work with universities about how that's reflected in their program based on what employers want, and how academics can incorporate that into their programs and share the expertise of the HR leaders that are our members in regards to what's happening in their organisation for case studies and things like that. So it's absolutely a journey. You heard me say in the early before, 75% of HR practitioners don't have much knowledge in this space, but as a professional association, we're trying to be that point of connection with, many and thousands of practitioner members, their programs and what capabilities we think should be in there, and those local relationships to help, how do we find the evidence and how do our HR professionals support academics deliver these skills to students.
Great. Thank you so much. We've got a couple of questions, and if people have got questions, please put them in. There's a couple here. You've just kind of addressed, I think, Jonathan, one of the challenges in terms of moving things forward. But are there other challenges in terms of your overall profession in adopting generative AI that you haven't talked about? So the person that's asked the question is thinking about is actually access to the technology. I mean, it's not free in most cases. And if you wanted to have a secure environment, it's certainly something that you have to make sure you pay for your employees. What about the ethical concerns? I think we've probably covered off, but happy to go around on those. But is there also a sense, and maybe the 70% having not looked at it that much, Jonathan, might signal there's a bit of inertia in relation to it as well? Any other things that, that you're thinking about as people leading professions and positioning professions in a particular context?
So one of the things, Kylie, that we're dealing with is exactly that point, it's the accessibility of the technology in the justice sector. So obviously those big firms who have, deeper pockets, who can invest in, closed sandboxes and the like to protect client confidentiality and the like, they're able to invest in the technology and move with the technology. 90% of the legal profession in Victoria are small businesses. They are sole traders in and of the main. They don't have the same capacity to invest in some of their technology. So it creates two issues. One, it creates the issue of the ability for them to compete on an even playing field. The second thing is, what does it do from an access to justice perspective for the profession? And particularly if you've got government investing in technology, and they might be on the prosecution side, for example, but you've got the defence side as the small business provider. If there's more information available to those who have access, who may be prosecuting the citizen, to those who are defending the citizen, how do you make sure that we're not ending up with an inequitable justice system because there's not the same investment and access to the investment? And particularly, if you're a self-represented litigant, for example, up against the state, how do you make sure you're able to get the same access to information that the state may have?
Yeah, great. Rachel, what about in the health professions? Because I think we've heard from Bronwyn and from others before about how it's being used directly to support clients and improve client quality of life, productivity, so on, communication, as we saw in that example. what about from your perspective this potential for divide? And I guess we've brought up that idea that it might exacerbate bias and potentially have unintended outcomes. So I guess I'm asking, is that something that the health professions are thinking about as well?
Thanks, Kylie. I think, yeah, it's definitely one of the things, and I guess it's a really complicated space at the moment because there's a whole lot of work that's going on, you know, at the Department of Health level and the TGA about what types of devices and tools and technology are regulated and are considered a medical device as well. So I think that, you know, depending on how that classification ends up, that can depend, you know, impact its uptake and cost and access and all these types of things. So I think there's going to be a lot of change in that space, you know, over the next couple of years, and as more kind of tools come on as well. I mean, I think it's more potentially rather than access in the health space. So it's definitely consideration is probably the bias that's being considered, and particularly a lot of the tools that have come out of the US that are being adopted for the Australian environment. You know, what have they been trained on? What kind of health data are they appropriate for the Australian context? Or if they've been used for specific communities, you know, are they appropriate for use in those communities? And so I think that there's a lot more of a discussion to be had around that in terms of guidance and the selection of tools and the evidence that's been used to build them.
Thank you. Just one last question before we have to hand back. It's gone so quickly. The question around accrediting university programs, and I guess it touches on all of you in some way. The question is really about how do you not make this another addition to the set of either competencies that are required to be demonstrated or other framings that you might put around a professional accreditation. How is there a sense that you might need to redefine from a sort of a ground up or a greenfield perspective, what are the core competencies given the impact of this technology? Or is this something you wouldn't see as being needing to be part of the accreditation requirements? Is it more something that might be guidance? Is it more to do with the sort of pedagogical components of how to, rather than some of the content-based what's that are often in professional standards? Give me a sense of what your professional association is thinking in relation to that, and where you're looking to feel confident about providing that guidance and or standards as part of the accreditation of programs. Anyone want to have a jump into that one, if it's okay?
I'm happy to start, Kylie, and I don't work in our accreditation space, so it'll be very high level. But I guess we're looking at kind of both, so looking at what kind of hooks, I guess, we need in accreditation standards. But I think the bulk of guidance that we provide will be in practical things like, you know, case studies and things like that, and other types of guidance. I think that rather than probably having standalone, you know, competencies about AI, it would be more embedded into existing competencies. But I don't think we would be thinking to add, you know, I think just like selecting kind of any tool for healthcare, just treating AI as kind of similar to that and applying the ethical framework.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kelly?
I'm happy to add to that, and I will also disclose I'm not part of our accrediting team.
It's okay, I'm not asking you to commit on behalf of the entire profession.
Fabulous. But what I can talk about, and similar to what Jonathan was talking about recently, you know, everything that we do for our members, and particularly from an education point of view, is guided by our CA capability model, which is our capability model of what we consider accounting and finance professionals need to have their capability for now and into the future. And we have just recently added in AI fluency into that as a standalone capability. However, what we have done is exactly what you were just talking about, Rachel. We have integrated it into other capabilities as well. So this is really in recognition that right now it's new and emerging, and we do need to give it some focus. We've got a lot of people that need to upskill, not just graduates, lots of people all the way across their career stages. And we know that people, regardless of where they are in their career stages, they're going to be at different levels of maturity for this AI adoption. So, whereas some of the other capabilities that we look at, it might be, reasonably consistent and in some ways sort of linear as people move through their careers. This is not one of those situations. We've got people that are upskilling, at all different rates of pace. So right now, yes, we have this as a separate AI fluency capability, but the way that we present that is that it's always in a stack of capabilities. So it's not just a standalone, and I think that's where you encapsulate the other things we've been talking about today. So we would never consider AI fluency on its own without professional, without critical thinking, without problem solving, without agility and change, without ethics and governance, so that all of those things are together. And perhaps in the future, once it is more of an embedded piece of another tool that we use, perhaps then we look at actually pulling that back into a range of capabilities. But certainly for now, we do think it's worth sort of calling out so that we can sort of develop and lead towards that capability development.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, Adam, any last comments on this one?
I could just say it's a very important premise. I think we add to frameworks and capabilities significantly, and not often do we think about what needs to come off there. So I think it's an important discipline to continually review everything as things come on. Just from an HR perspective, I think what we're finding is, and this has been a journey second separately to generative AI, is the HR profession is fleshing itself into specialities. So we have people that are culture change specialists, industrial relations specialists, HR generalists, and a range of things. And I know many of my colleagues around the screen here have specializations in there. We didn't and don't, but what we're finding as we add to it and we say, gee, we can't subtract much from here, and 30 capabilities is a lot for any individual to demonstrate. How do we look as a profession how to keep a fundamental core of what it means to be an HR professional, but also dive into that specialization space and find a way to accredit in specialization areas and things. So that's a maturity thing for our profession. Others are on the other journey, but that's probably going to be one of the answers to an increasing set of capabilities required for HR professionals.
Thank you. I'm going to hand back to our wonderful host for today to reflect really on this panel and on the rest of the symposium. So thank you all so much for your insights. It's been fantastic. Back to our hosts. Thank you.
And to you, thank you very much, Kylie, and to the panel, and of course all the chairs and panels throughout the day on what has been quite the symposium here at ATN. Well, now it is time, Guillaume and Elena, to summarise everything that we've heard. So it's really to you both. It's a big job, but in you we trust. And I suppose the first question I'd like to ask, and we did hear this mantra quite a deal today, and it was all about being bold, being brave, being curious about Gen AI. Guillaume, you can take that one first. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. And I think that's probably one of the biggest take from everyone that spoke today in the workforce and the academia. I think that even the leaders today trying to understand how to transition, showing some of this as well, right? Being bold and being curious, as we all a little bit being thrown out in that scene of adopting a tool that is, I think, beyond what we could have, foreseen before it was actually here. I think to me personally, being bold and brave and curious and courageous in that space is really on a daily basis asking myself, how can AI help me do this? And there was a mentioning today, one of the panelists saying, keep, one of the tools or many of the tools open on your web browser all the
24
time.
hours a day.
24 hours a day. That's right. Yeah. Maybe there's a plug. We can put it straight up into my brain. I think this is probably one of the first steps there is to use the tool to enhance thinking on a daily basis. that we're all used to problem solving at work, problem solving in our life. And this tool, the more we use it, I think the more it shows part of us inside, that we have the knowledge, we have the context, we have the thinking and the questioning to approach those problems in a much more efficient way. And this tool, I think, is probably the best approach to this. So yeah, I think it's about this, right? Being able to, be curious about how we think about our own biases, how we usually think, and so relearning to learn, which is, I think this is the tool that can actually even help leaders today to do that and help other people do it as well.
And I think you've got a role to play to help those leaders be bold and brave in it. But we'll come back to that as well. Elena, for you as well, the be bold, the be curious. But also, if I can, that's the first part of the question. The other part is, what do you think the most important takeout? We've heard so many views today, expert views, but from a student/graduate perspective, what do you think is the best and most important takeaway from today?
Oh gosh, I think it's just so exciting, isn't it? First with the be bold, be brave, I think it is, as you were talking about, Guillaume, the bi-directional learning. I think students, we've grown up with technology, not with GenAI, but with other forms of technology. And so I think going through, university at this time, as it's sort of being explored, we've got a really unique opportunity to be learning in a hands-on experience and then taking that into businesses, taking that into workplaces and helping to upskill the current employees as well. So I think that's a really exciting opportunity for us. In terms of other takeaways for students, so I think probably the most important one is utilising it as a tool to supplement the human experience and the human skill set. I definitely came into this being like, GenAI, I don't know much about it. It's a bit scary. I don't want to do the wrong thing with it. But I think from today, what I've really learned is it's a tool that we can use to support ourselves to really present and achieve the best version of ourselves that we can. But we need to make sure we focus on those soft skills. So the critical thinking, that curiosity, the collaboration with other people, bringing it all together to really supplement and drive better performance, better outcomes from our own internal skill sets.
And from the legal fraternity point of view, which is something that you know well, do you think that's an even bigger challenge than the general community side of things? Do you think they're moving forward? And we've seen some pushback, admittedly. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think I would definitely believe that it's probably a more difficult challenge than in some other industries. The legal profession isn't known for leaving tradition and for taking great new leaps of faith. And I think there's also a bit of risk there as well in terms of this is a new field and we don't know how this is going to go. And playing with people's legal rights is that's quite a big risk, same with healthcare and things like that. And obviously, as we were hearing today, it's a very heavily regulated area. And we've seen some mishaps with the use of GenAI so far. But I think what we also saw was some very forward-thinking firms and regulatory bodies. So I think the future is very exciting in the legal profession as well, but it might develop a little bit differently to potentially some other industries.
I'd like to pick up on that point with you, Guillaume, and thinking about it from that perspective of stronger, better thinking. How do you think we get to that point?
I think we're definitely in a transition at the moment, right? The tools have been released to the public. Most of it for free. They keep increasing in capabilities and speeds every month. I think that now that we see academia, learning, teaching, trying to transition and evolve and integrate this into learning, there is increasing notion of AI literacy. And with AI literacy comes as well AI maturity. And so we can clearly see that from some of the case studies dating already 2 years from what we see today, use a big difference in how we approach those tools. And what to me is emerging a lot, and with the concern is if we take the easy path of using the tool to create content, then that means we don't understand what the tool is being designed for, right? It is being designed for statistical, creation of words. And that means that anything that it produces by itself will be mediocre at best. Now, if we start to actually see the next step, which is allowing the thinking and the emergence of more information from the human perspective, context, stories, experiences, then all of a sudden it can actually enhance and increase, augment our own thinking, our biases, and even bring us, a conflicting perspective that we haven't considered before.
This is one question I'll ask you both, but first, Elena, you're going to get it. Was there one thing that really stuck out, that surprised you about today's event? I know Guillaume mentioned it was flagged that we should have the tools open 24 hours a day. Whether that was a surprise or not, I don't know, I'll come to you. But was there one thing for you that jumped out?
I think, again, coming back to the fact that I had limited experience in GenAI, the absolute versatility of it. We heard from so many different industries, people in all different stages of their career, professional bodies. Everyone's using it. There's an application for it, from research to healthcare to absolutely everything that you could possibly imagine. And I think that was so eye-opening for me to really understand there are so many different applications for this new tool, and there's really not a world where we won't be using it, and not a part of the world where we won't be using it. Every area of our life is going to be impacted by this, and it can be impacted in such a positive way if we develop the right frameworks and the right skills to use it.
Guillaume, have we got over the stigma? Do you think the will is now overriding the stigma of using GenAI? Are we at that point yet?
That's a good question. I think that those that use it more regularly, a little bit like me, start to think that it's part of life now. But I think we can still see a lot of statistics that most people in using it in daily or frequently, it's still a minority, right? We're looking at 20, 30% max, depending on the different industries. So I think that's, and I reflect of what I've read about, professional experts talking about this as well, that even if the technology was stopped to evolve today, I think it would take still another 10 years to fully adopt the change that the technology today can provide to the workforce and to our personal life. So I think this is just the emergence, the beginning of the transition. And I think to me, it's very exciting to actually see this level of thinking already, to go to the next level of how can we think better with this tool.
And I guess one of the other key things, and actually I think Dr. Perugini said it out in the keynote address, was the humanizing of the use of the tools was very important. Never make sure that those transferable human skills are never lost. I think we heard those in some of the panels as well. That sounds like a key point moving forward as well.
100%. I would definitely agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. We're at that point almost where we'll be winding up the show. I will put you both on the spot just one more time, as if you haven't been put on the spot enough. And it is the final message. And I guess from a student's and a grad's perspective, but also from generally the sector, higher education and industry out there. If there was one thing in terms of remembering, of course, we're all talking about graduate skills and employability, what would be the final message that you would impart?
Well, I feel a bit cheeky doing this, but be bold, be brave. Go out there and learn. This is such an incredible opportunity to explore and to develop ourselves in the world we live in. And I think we just really need to grasp that opportunity and make the most of it.
Yeah, that's very good. I think to me, it's if you don't know how to use the tool, or you sit in front of the platform and struggle to a little bit interact or understand how it can help you, I think the best is asking the tool, how can it help you be a better version of yourself? And I think that's like any other people that you would talk to and interrogate, your perspective, it's a lot about self-awareness. And this tool, I think, is perfect for this beautiful mirror about who we are personally, and be able to be self-aware about our gaps, knowledge, and then be able to get to the next step.
Wonderful. Well, all time is up now, so all I can say is thank you. You've been fabulous facilitators. Guillaume and Elena, thank you for joining us and keeping us going through these last few hours. And thanks to, I'm trying not to forget everyone. So let's start with the production crew, the people behind the scenes who've done a wonderful job here at Activator at RMIT. Thank you to Brendan. Thank you very much, Nick. Belinda. To the ATN Directorate team back at our main headquarters here in Melbourne, but also with us here today. Thank you. It's been a stellar effort. Also, I'd like to make sure that we thank all the panel members and the chairs, of course, of those panels. The audience, we did top 800 after all in terms of the registrations. So many thanks to you, and thank you for the interactive nature of it all and sending through your questions. And hopefully we gave you some answers and some food for thought leading into, I'm sure, perhaps another symposium on GenAI in the near future for ATN universities. Speaking of which, be sure to go to our website, atn.edu.au, for all the latest news and views from across our member universities and the Directorate. And of course, join us on LinkedIn and subscribe on LinkedIn. And we're also on Blue Sky now. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us again, the 2025 ATN National Symposium on GenAI. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting it with both Guillaume and Elena. See you again next time on ATN Universities.